Let's start with a roll call of who's here, starting at the end.
Dan Walkus.
Susan Stanish.
Ron Summer.
Corey Oxner.
Sarah Miller.
Trustee Neil Shaw.
Perfect. And then I did get a something from Alan that said he had a couple sick kids and can't make it tonight. So Alan is out, and I received another text, and I don't know whose it is because they didn't have a name on it, but they'd be like 15 minutes late.
It might have been John. I didn't send any text.
I don't always have everyone's name and number in there, so. All right, so it seems like we might be, I don't know about Corbett. Did you see something from Corbett? Okay. So right now, just. Yeah, 3 down. Corbett and John. Corbett, John, Allen. John or Allen. John or Corbett, one of them will show up. Whichever one texted that they were going to be late. They're probably sliding around out there.
Yeah, it's really bad out there.
My wife was 5 minutes from home and it took her 25 minutes to get here. So, all right. Just to get started though, agenda approval. Let's start with the agenda and just touch base. I wanted to add one thing was just an update on the work plan because we touched base on it at the town meeting, board meeting a couple weeks ago. So just wanted to give a couple blurbs on that. And then we have the master plan and amenities draft of scope of service to discuss tonight. And then, and that's in a document, I believe, up there. And then we also have the park at Rock Creek, which is a residential project proposal for Zaharias property. And so just want to touch base on that. There was an email with lots of attachments to me, like, I don't know, a couple days ago, maybe a week ago, whenever I saw it last. But we can go through, there's various environmental assessments, impact statements, et cetera, just on that property. And then just wanted to touch base on the indoor space requirements and just more of that's more of an update on just where we stand with what we need to do as we move forward. And so Neil, I hope you will be here during that part before we sneak out. The PROSTAC amenities priorities list, I did send that out with the master plan draft scope of services. And some of you ranked them more than, I would just wanted people thinking about them if we want to add amenities and make sure we have all the amenities in there. So I mean, if we add many more amenities, we'd re-rank just quickly, but you know, if you've already done it, great. And if we add more, great. So those are those pieces. And then I just wanted to touch base on project teams. If there's any passions for working groups, just kind of keep that down there for future ideas and concepts. And then we want to touch base on the OSAC meeting update, would be the EF, I guess. And then within that meeting update, also just touch base on, I'm assuming we'll touch base on some of the trail discussion and Town 15 joint statement. So those are just kind of last couple pieces. So with that, any other comments, questions?
So we're going to add a agenda item 5F, is that right? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, but also, well, I said work plan too. I want to just touch base on the work plan and what we talked about with the town board. It doesn't really change much, but I just want to give an update. But yeah, F would be OSAC meeting update, which would be Town 15 joint statement. And I believe you talked about trails, right?
Yeah, trails in the top 15.
So we'll just touch base on those 2 bullet points. Okay, any other adjustments to the agenda before we get started this evening? Okay, with that, let's move forward. So no public comment. So moving into the first discussion point, I just wanted to give a brief statement about the work plan. So Todd and I showed up and presented that at the town board meeting, the 10th, a week ago. Feels like 3 weeks. But anyway, we went through it and just touched base on a lot of the pieces that we're looking at this year. A couple of the pieces that town board asked about was review of park maintenance and improvements, and just making sure we keep that on our radar for park improvements. And I told him it ties along with the park walks that we've been doing, because I think that's where we find a lot of, what's this park need, what's wrong with it, how's it going, those type of things. So whether there's maintenance requirements or improvement recommendations, I think that in the last few that we did, that's what really led to some of the amenity priority list additions. So just continuing that discussion. And then they also just touched base a little bit on, my wording, so you guys can all change the wording however you want, but the Parks Trails Master Plan, which is the PROST Master Plan, amenities, however we want to word that. I think we should try and come up with a solid, this is what it is. I think it's the PROST Master Plan is what it's been called, So I'll try and be consistent on that naming as we go forward. But in there, I also, we had established a schedule for the year and then discuss, a couple of key points that we had discussed through the last year or two was Rock Creek Corridor Vision Plan and just Autry Park on one end and Town 15 on the other, and that whole segment in between there, and whether or not there was upgrades and anything in there. So we were also looking at, if we didn't get the entire town master plan at the time, what are the pieces on that main corridor that we could potentially add with a lot of the review in the last couple of years about Autry Park. So just wanted to put those 2 bullet points out there. Other than that, told them that we were working on the Colton, and I think that was it. I think they didn't really have any other questions, and they approved the work plan, so that's where we're headed this year. And I think it'll be a lot of the PROST master plan and how we can guide that process and make sure we're set up for future potential opportunities and proposals for future amenities.
So I want to make sure I captured this. Were you
Sorry.
saying that they were asking us to use PROST master plan as like a consistent name, or you just mentioned that you're going to start using it?
I'm going to start using it.
Okay.
I don't think they asked specifically, but if you look at our work plan, we wrote it different ways at different times, and through the last, couple months as we refined it, we kind of squeezed things out of it down to the basic and essentials. And if you look at the work plan, it said Parks and Trails Master Plan, utilization, and then at the very bottom, we said it was the update of the PROST Master Plan, because it was an update of the 2005 PROST Master Plan. So it's just more of consistency of what it's going to be called. I'd say PROST Master Plan, Parks, Recreation, Open Space, Trails Master Plan, for as much scope as we can get covered. And that leads into our first bullet point of really just the master plan. Let's call it the review of the master plan draft scope of services, which is the kind of first bullet point there.
Okay.
That way, because I interchangeably use words sometimes, so that's my fault. So with that, I know I did receive some comments, and do you have that one on here, Leslie? Perfect. So I did receive comments, Susan and Dan, I believe, and I kind of made some modifications along the way. On page 1, yeah. I think some of the things that Susan, you put in there was just, Town of Superior PROST Master Plan 2020 update, scope of services, pretty minor. Goals and objectives are still pretty much the same. We want to provide project goals and objectives for work plan associated with projects. Need to meet the needs of the town, so that's kind of high level. But the community input, there was I can't remember what it was on this one.
That was from me, and yeah, I was just saying that I think the original text there doesn't talk about the fact that we still have a few parcels left to build out.
Right.
And I think one of the most beneficial things that could come out of this would be like a projection of how the remaining space is going to be used, who's going to be moving in, are they families, are they, what is the ultimate demographic picture going to look like? So I'm hoping that that's part of what we'll get with our master plan update. And I'd like to see that reflected in the scope of services too.
I think.
So,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there is some reference in the assessment section, not so much right here, but later on, about understanding the demographics. Because I was concerned that I wanted to make sure that was reflected as well. Not necessarily the exact build out, but more the demographics, since maybe we don't completely know the whole build out plan.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see that. We can circle back to it if
Yeah.
you can point me to whatever text.
Well, and I guess the question is, do we want to put right in here, inventory and assessment, facility and program, development of park standards? Because, I mean, the biggest comments I think was, really add the PROSTAC and the town staff was one of the comments that we really want to be able to work with both groups, but I think it's town staff to guide, but
Well, yeah, I think I'm the one that added that because I'm not sure that we're even going to have the ability to kind of do some of the digging that's going to be necessary
right.
as far as true documentation of stuff.
Okay. So just minor admin piece. So I think Alan's absent. Corbett, I'm not sure about, and John is the late one. You texted me, right?
I texted Corbett.
Oh, okay.
Here he comes.
Oh, here it comes.
Maybe Corbett texted me.
That's probably true.
Either way, we got two. There we go. So everyone's here. Okay. Well, either way, we got Corbett and John, so Alan is the only absent. And he.
Somebody just drove in front of me.
Okay, we'll see if any public comment comes in. So, back to, we're just discussing the master plan draft scope of services, talking about just making sure that within the scope of services that we receive, that we get some demographic update and understanding. So I don't know exactly where to put that. Might be inventory assessment.
Yeah, I haven't looked at this in a while, but I had a feeling it was later on, but I could be
Regional.
wrong, but I remember
Well,
looking
it's-
for it specifically and feeling like I found it somewhere.
It could be in this, the facilities and program needs and priorities, because that's based on the demographics.
And by demographics, you don't mean today's demographics, it's more of the future demographics of what
Trying
the
to
town is going to
understand.
look like
Yeah.
at full
Likely
build out.
projections, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got all kinds of stuff in there. So, did everyone else have a chance to read through this? I don't want to skim through it all, but, okay, so really the intent here is that just future build out, final demographics, we want to address that. So let's come back to that comment, or depending on if it's somewhere else, we can remove that or add it somewhere else. And then this one, Dan, I think this was your comment too, was the assist in the development of the standard incorporated land use code.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know,
wondering if that's part of the scope or not.
I don't know if we
Because I think
need that at this time.
originally, they were starting with a blank slate and telling us how everything should be developed, but I'm not sure that's really part of the scope now.
But it is addressing if there is the undeveloped parcels and how would that land use code and development of those parcels be handled. There's
This is
only
the
a
part-
couple left.
This is the part that I think, later on, I think I made a comment that I was asking if we are actually gonna include the planning commission. And this is like an example of why the planning commission would be involved, I think. if
Right.
it was in there. I'm just not sure if it needs to be there.
So, and I think that concept designs will be included for any new amenity identified within the list of priorities. This one's kind of pretty large, a very large task if that's to actually stay that way, because I think it's
Yeah.
more of a conceptually what amenities, I think it should be more what the amenities should be that we need, that are missing, not a concept design for those, but more of a identify needed amenities. So I don't know.
Isn't design concepts one of our companies we use?
Yeah.
We may want to reword that, because it kind of
Yeah.
sounds like, oh, we need to use that company when That's the first thing I thought of when I said it.
That's what I read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause-
It's called design concepts, it's not concept.
Because this one, it opens it up to designing all the remaining areas.
Right,
And I don't think, we want a guide of what we want for amenities, not a design for all the amenities. Because the design would come by future development of a park or, certain undeveloped parcel. So I guess we could change that and say, I'm trying to figure out how to change that.
Unless you want to stop and say maybe include, have an off-the-shelf idea. I guess we can get that out of
Yeah.
I'm just going to take that out here. If I can see. Maybe. Wow. May. How's that sound? There. May. Well, whatever. It's got an extra strike in there. May be included for any new amenity identified within the list of priorities. It seems like amenity list of missing amenities is the critical piece.
Yeah, we definitely want to have that identified.
I don't know. There's a bunch of wording, but
Yeah, I mean, if you're worried about the level of detail, you could quantify it and say like high-level designs or something to that effect, right? Or high-level concepts will be included,
Yeah.
just so you can try to say, hey, we're not looking for a detail, but we're looking for something that just to identify what this thing would be.
I may have to reshuffle how this is ordered within there, but just getting the information there. Provide, future build out, future amenity. I don't know. Provide concept or case study, because a case study would be just a quick image of this is the type of thing we're expecting to put in, or that you're missing, or that you could implement here, and represent it in the future amenity type, to represent the future amenity type. So I don't know, we can reword that a little bit, but conceptually it gets some of the points across that we're missing. Implementation and action plan, strategy for aspects of the plan. So that's really, they provide that strategy to us with their proposal.
A question I have on this, by the way, just maybe it's just the industry. So we always use shall for requirements, and wills in our world is,
Oh, shall, will.
Yeah, so are the wills in this thing basically saying you will do this, as a shall, versus for us, in our world, when we say, you will, it's like, if you want. But shall is something that you have to do. Maybe it's just terminology for us.
I guess it comes down to, this is a scope of services, and somebody comes with a proposal that says, here's what we can do for you, and then select the individual, right? So depending on how the individual proposer takes it, they say, here's our plan, here's what we can provide to you. And maybe they leave out some critical things, and we say, well, you left those out, and without them, we don't feel you're the right person. Right? I mean, that's really what the proposal process is. So if we find somebody comes with a great plan of how to implement, and they may not have every bullet point, but they have the best opportunity and plan of how to get us to that end goal.
Maybe it's just probably different in industry.
know,
So
that's
like
where
for us, we say, if it's a shall, then you have to say that I don't meet this shall. And if it's a will, then it's a will or a should.
Is that in your definitions and your terms?
It is. It is. No, seriously. Shall is something that has to be met, and you have to report what you don't meet, what you're not going to supply.
I don't know. To
It's
me,
probably soft
to me,
drive.
I think it's softer in this, and this is it's recommendations for the scope of services. And to me, if we want something critical in there, we should make sure we identify it. And if they don't address it, then maybe they're not the right respondent to do it. Because we're still looking for, this will just go out as a request for proposal to get proposers to say they will do it for X amount of dollars. Right? So I don't know, they may have a different definition of will or shall. All right, continuing on though. Final product, I guess I read it a different way, and the fact that it was how many hard copies are they providing, not who is working with it. And to me, it's like provide it to PROSTAC and other town committees as required or requested by the board, because how many hard copies of this proposal do you want? That's the way I read this piece. Because it's like we could all get a hard copy and analyze it, or we could get one PDF that's on the Dropbox and we all can look at the Dropbox digitally. But that's the way I read the final product, because I know on a lot of proposals you have to bring X number of hard copies signed and sealed, or you have to bring X number of zip drive, USB drive, thumb drives with the information and content on it. So I took your comments, Dan, and just kind of said 16, just for, to me, that's a dollar figure of how many copies do I need to make. And I agree that the Planning Commission, depending on which level of finalization of these and what impact it has, should be included on various aspects, but maybe not all of it right away, but maybe further as we refine in certain zones. But that's to be determined, I guess, as we move forward. Todd will figure that out. Well, and that, yeah, this was your comment. I left it in there. Could we just remove these? And I think that's why I think it's more of, we have X number of copies and you can hand them out, one to each committee, just for at least everyone has a hard copy, and then everyone can get a digital. I think more importantly, we should probably add in somewhere in there about one copy, one digital copy, or a digital copy. Because really,
One electronic copy.
does it say that? Where to go?
Last
sentence.
One hard copy and one electronic copy.
All right, perfect. Okay.
So should we ask the planning commission if they want to be involved, or how should we do that, or should we assume that they'll be brought in if they need to be?
I would make the assumption that all committees would be brought in based on the content and information that we work through with the respondent.
Okay.
Because there may be certain areas of trails that OSAC would want to be involved in. There may be certain areas of just integration of other pieces that they talk about amenities, and all of a sudden CAPS or art wants to be involved in. Yeah, and the historical commission, yeah.
Youth guys.
Yeah. So I think it's, you know, it's ours to drive and say, hey, let's get the ideas going. Let's work with them on developing the plan, making sure they get amenities, make sure they get identification of kind of demographics, zones, coverages, all those type of things that are in the original, but it's an update of it. And then as you get to that next level of, here, this park, there's a bunch of things that we think we could add to it, then let's talk to Planning Commission or Historic Commission, you know, all these other committees that would want to have input, and just give it out to probably the chairs, and then they can decide whether they talk about it at one of their meetings and bring back content. So it's just, it all kind of falls into the timeline though. Okay. So keeping up with my time here. There's the proposal requirements, cover letter, electronic, teamwork. So this is more of how they're going to do the work, and scope of services, compensation, the schedule. You know, it's the updated to 2020, and I think it was. Yeah, so we basically want to try and complete it this year to give to the board at the end of the year. And I'm not sure if that would make planning, budgeting and everything else, but it would give us at least a guide to look into the next year of what some of the results are. And, you know, there may be a draft proposal prior to that that could still help guide the planning process.
Might be worth flagging high dollar items sooner so that they could be put in there.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if, I mean, we try and reflect, we want to get something at the end of the year, but if there's a interim stage of October, no, September? I think September is more of the,
Yeah, I mean, the budget gets approved in October, so that's almost too late. You know, if we want to intercept 2021, we should try to have an interim suggestion in the
Draft.
summer. You know, yeah, I mean, if there's a specific need that we need for 2021, but, you know, when we did the budget this past October, we have a 5-year parks plan, which is fairly comprehensive. We can move stuff around in that, and that might be the easiest thing to do is take the interim and then the final plan and potentially move things around. But that 2021 budget will get approved. It'll get reviewed for the first time in September and then approved in October. So, you know, changing 2021 might be difficult, but we might have some latitude, you know, near the end. But I think
but even if it's budgeted, hopefully this process, even if it's at the end of the year, would provide opportunities for where
yes,
those things would go
Yes.
and what could be done. So if it budgets a pickleball court,
exactly.
this would tell us where to put
Yep.
that said court prior to finalization.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there. But this one, I must have missed this the first time I read it, but see attachment 1 for proposed schedule. But really, we're in February right now.
Yeah.
So if I look at just timeline here of just roughly throwing out month by month, so it's a put out proposal. So
Allison
March,
had provided a draft schedule.
did I miss it?
It's in that color thing that she put together.
Yeah, it was the other flyer, that's right. I have all my good stuff.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but it's still, we need to get the scope and award bids probably in March. Yeah, there you go. So that'll still stand true. So if we can get this out, wrap it up and get it out here at the end of this month, or in this next week or two, that would still allow some award of it in March. And then really it'd be our April meeting that we'd have more further interaction with them potentially, and continue forth on their discovery as well as our discussion of scope and understanding of it.
Just to keep in mind, we only have one board meeting in March 9th. So if we don't hit that date, it'll just move to April 13th.
It should be right before our next meeting, right? April's, mid-April usually, 18th, 19th, 17th,
Yeah.
somewhere there. Okay.
Sorry, I'm drawing all over. You draw all over.
Anyway, yeah. Okay. But that would put us in April, really kicking off with them, and then you really have May, June, and July as try and wrap something up to get more understanding, and then wrap it up by the end of the year. So I think it still stands true, and the dates are still pretty close. And so I figure we can let them go with that and see if we can meet that and just continue to work with them. So, but it really shows that it'll be April, May, June will be our heavy meetings, or May, June would be heavy meetings and trying to interact, and maybe even a breakout session with them, even if it's a special meeting or something like that, to try and, keep that process going for them. So, and then also getting next steps of how they do community engagement, rolling that into 4th of July and Arbor Day, things like that. So, okay, any other comments on this one? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. And
Not a specific comment, but how are we gonna take this thing and get it to be not a red line copy, but something we can actually give to someone? Who's gonna do that? When's he gonna get that?
Well, you or I can modify these comments, or we can work with finalization of taking out, because essentially what we put in here is, other than making sure this comment is somewhere throughout, we can take out most of these red lines, and I just need to clean up that concept paragraph. And this one down here is just a little bit more cleanup.
So are we in agreement that we need to add something about demographics? 'Cause I didn't
believe-
see that mentioned anywhere else.
I believe we should. I mean, that's my.
The closest thing I see is the one that talks about existing, what is this? Program inventory and assessment. And so we might be able to combine it with that one, but I don't see anything that says we're gonna project who you're gonna have in this town when it's fully built out, and use that to decide what you're missing.
I must have been thinking of the original document because I went back and started reading through that, and there was a lot of information in there. But you're right, it needs to be
Assumed, because
reflected, yeah,
during the first one, nothing was really built yet.
right.
Well, I'd say half the town was built. Half of Rock Creek was built when this first went out. Because I think this was on the 2005. So I'd say pretty much north half of Colton, and so the south half was under development when this went out. And the key focus on the 2005 PROSTAC master plan was Founders Park, and it did do analysis of various other proximities and other type of demographics. So I think that maybe we should just put something in here.
Yeah,
It seems like right in this area, populations and minimize duplication of services. Also,
what about anticipated populations or projected populations?
for final build out? I mean, how do you say that? Final town development?
You could just do it for the 10-year period that this plan covers.
Oh. Okay. Review and analyze projections. How's that sound? Review and analyze projections for remaining to-be-built parcels, including current and expected demographic data for 10-year period for the development, for the development plan. I don't know. We'll have to wordsmith that a little bit more, but yeah, it'll be between you and me. I'm just cleaning up what we have there and then handing it off to town staff, and Leslie can look at it and just verify if there's any other things that you want to tweak around.
Yeah, we'll just put it into the town's RFP format as part of the scope of services.
So we'll just clean it up and then we'll go into the standard format.
Is there anything standing in the way once we get this finalized to going out for proposals?
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna take this one out here.
Having missed the last meeting, it's technically the 2021, 2020. It's technically, we're putting out for bids to be done in 2021.
But if we can get it all done in this year, yes, it'd be.
It's just technicality, not a-
Is it a will or a shall?
The vendor's work is gonna be done in 2020.
Yeah.
Right.
We
So hopefully the master plan update is 2020's
Yeah.
analysis for a 10-year projection.
Starting in 2021.
Yeah.
And did we want to ever think about taking the OS part out? Make it more of a park, rec, and trail? Rather than park, rec, open space and trails? Just devil's advocate.
I mean-
People are gonna ask these questions, so I figure let's ask them now while we're sitting.
The,
I love it.
the current plan, yeah, the
One
current
more meetings, I'm out of here.
one is park, recreation, and trails. Master plan.
What's that?
The current one that we're updating
Yeah.
is parks, recreation, and trails.
Okay.
Master
Sure?
plan.
I used to carry my binder around and it's the Prost
I thought
master
It's
plan.
always been pros, but
It has the OS in there.
But in
and it has-
'05, there was a
and it
lot
has-
more open space to discuss. That's
And it has
why.
analysis of open space, and it talks about how to grade open space and everything else. It was a section within the binder.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
So, I mean,
Again,
I,
I'm just throwing it out there, people are gonna say, why are we even talking about open space when there's an open space committee? Let them, I'm just throwing it out.
I guess
It is definitely there.
the only piece I would say that the open space would be addressed by is potentially the Town 15, because that and, I guess, what's it called now, CenturyLink? CenturyLink are the only two potential, and Zaharias, which we're gonna talk about here in a few minutes, is, the key three kind of open space or large parcels
There's a
left.
couple little ones, but you're right,
Yeah.
yeah, just throwing it out there now. Let's talk about it now before this goes out.
I would say I'd rather leave it in there just so for their opinion of what the, I mean, the whole intent of, there's a lot of character to the town with the open space and the parts of native open space with manicured open space and recreation all within the same zones. And I think that, I don't want to take that out because I would say Zaharias, or not Zaharias, Autry is a good discussion about how much should be developed and how much should be left, and what recreation opportunities could be in an open space type setting, and the same with Town 15. It's still called Town 15.
Well, and I would also argue that, you know, I would like to at least see in there that if at some point the city does able to procure the CenturyLink area,
Mhm.
what their, you know, if you do this, what do you do with it? Do you leave it open or, I mean,
So I would say that we leave it as is for leaving flexibility for the discussion with the consultant. And if we focus on more the recreation and trails, that's fine. But if we actually still want to have that understanding of what they view and what we view as a committee, as well as OSAC would want to weigh in, I think it'd be good to have in the scope of services for them instead of them saying, I wasn't going to analyze all your open space around here too. Right? So, all right, so with that, do we need to vote on this or anything? It's just more of a, this is the scope of services that we all agree to? Put a recommendation?
I think you can just all agree to these as the scope of services with your
Okay.
fine tuning and that,
But in all seriousness, I think we're gonna have to vote when we find someone and say, we recommend this is who we wanna hire to do this. That's when we're gonna have to make a recommendation to the board. Right now, this is a proposal to find somebody,
Right.
which I don't think the board is that concerned about us getting their approval for, because they've kind of already approved that they want.
Right, they've
Yeah.
approved to move forward with it, it's just a matter of, once they bring something, it's up to, more of the town, us looking at it as well as, town board
Yeah, it's gonna turn out
approving
to
it.
be, this with X company,
Right.
please, and then they're gonna come back and say, that's too much money.
So not to go too far backwards, but in the OSAC work plan that the board is going to approve on Monday, review and approve, one of their ongoing is provide open space feedback related to the PROS master plan and town comprehensive plan. So I think keeping OS on there makes sense because they're planning to participate and
Okay, perfect. I wasn't
provide that
trying to cut
input.
them out, really. I wasn't.
No, I think
was.
it's a consistent.
Okay,
Todd,
so,
we can talk about that later, right?
Yes, we can.
All right, so with that, any more comments on this? If not, is everyone, I'm gonna just say, is everyone in agreement, just from a show of hands, that everyone's kind of behind what we wrote there? Unless there's
I would turn around and say, is anybody against this? That one thinks we need to back up or anything? That's where I would go with this.
whatever Ron says, I'm liking it.
Speak now, because we're going forward with this unless
All right.
somebody really thinks there's a
All right, so Todd and I will look at this.
So I will get this out to you by Friday. Can you take a look at it so we can get it to her by Monday and she can send it out?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Get it out the door.
Okay.
We'll get it to you Thursday. Yeah, I know.
All right, so let's move forward. So, just so that we can keep Neil here for a little bit, we're gonna skip over the Rock Creek, park at Rock Creek, and just skip down to the next one. Indoor space requirements. Just wanted to touch base on, at this point in time, Oz did a presentation on the 10th, and they've started to refine the indoor space plan for 1500 Colton. I don't know if we have anything else at this point in time to comment on, or we wait until they come back with their final kind of revision.
Yeah, so, the board obviously wants to try to get as much feedback as possible, but at the same time, try to continue to move this thing forward. So Oz couldn't retool the drawings to support the coming meeting on the 24th. But, on March 9th, they plan to have, an updated draft. And the thinking being, let's try to get as many people from the community to just weigh in on that. And obviously, PROSTAC won't have a meeting between now and March 9th, but, if PROSTAC members want to review it and see if it sort of adheres to the space planning and some of the concepts and ideas that we've gone through over the last couple of months with Oz, I think that's going to be the fastest way to try to get that feedback into the board.
Well, and I'd say that the presentation that they did February 10th did have refinements from the original, because the original was kind of bubble diagrams, and then it was more hardline, a little bit more of an understanding of what the space was. And then there was, I guess they kind of showed some more material kind of palette of where they were headed, kind of concepts and renderings. So it was a little more refined, and it was broken into, an entry foyer, lobby space with a library kind of behind a wall.
Yep.
So there was some more refinement of that space. I don't know if, I don't probably have the drawings of that to go through.
They're all on.
It's a PDF at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, they're all on the town website. It is probably a good idea to just kind of go through. Oh, there it is right there.
So we have what you guys, I watched the board meeting, but I kind of like drifted off. So, sorry,
No.
It was better if you sat in the back.
I just wonder where the board's at, where you guys are at right now.
Yeah, we only had 5 of the 7 members on the 10th. It was a little,
So,
If
The
you
mayor wasn't even there, right? Is that the one the mayor wasn't there?
yeah, Mark and Clint were missing at that one.
yeah, Sandy ran the meeting. But essentially, they just talked about, different exploration of different words to define it, the existing conditions, some existing site analysis, really just talking about the orientation of the building and which side things are on, because you have the Starbucks over here. Does everyone see that? I don't know if I can go to full screen or, it's kind of like a book layout, so that's one's half the other. Anyway, Starbucks over here, and then just the existing parking lot around it. But some of the things that they did talk about was just having this as more of a outdoor, indoor-outdoor, and utilizing the overhead cooling doors, the overhead garage doors. And therefore, there was a lot of discussion about, which side is the front of the building, where are all the people hanging out, all that kind of stuff. And
Do we have that whole parking lot? I always wanted to
Yes.
ask that.
Oh.
Okay.
Think-
The whole thing wrapping around?
Yeah, I
This,
think, is it?
all the way
that
here?
drawing?
yeah, all that?
There might be another
No,
drawing.
and go towards,
I don't think there's an overhead drawing, no, there's not.
Remember, because they said they didn't analyze the back corner and the flow of traffic back here, and
It's not in this package.
people getting around.
You gotta look at it Google, down
Right.
to it, but that, that whole, actually that blue stretch
that little stretch that comes
That's
down
all part of
towards,
the property.
This way down here?
Yeah.
that's why I was wondering, is that all, that's all part of the land that we bought?
Yeah, I mean, if you remember, Land Rover used to have their vehicles parked.
Right.
Everywhere.
Everywhere,
Yeah.
yeah, along that space.
On the
Well,
hill.
there's two parts to that, right? There's, in that blue area right there, there's parking spaces, but then just to the south of that, there's actually that gravel area, I think it's
And
included
the
too.
gravel area belongs to the Summit, and I think
Okay.
they've allowed Land Rover to use
Oh.
it. So the Summit HOA president has at least discussed or openly sort of suggested potentially a partnership here or something, as we could go forward. But, with what Oz proposed in terms of that, this east side of the building, sort of not using that parking, their analysis, one of these slides that they showed, said that you only need 25 parking spaces, which, I'm sure there's a parking analysis that supports that.
There.
People will walk
25.
So if we need more than that, how are we going to orient the spaces to get there?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, no question, this was a car dealership, the number of parking spaces doesn't really support a community center.
Right.
However, is 25 the right number?
So just quickly to browse through these, because I can't remember what order they were in or anything, but the key was the parking would be, you could come around the backside and access, but this, they were looking at putting more outdoor patio, food court, food trucks and
The
stuff
food
like
trucks
that.
would just orient themselves right
And,
there.
kind of take up that parking to more of a outdoor activity. So utilize the doors from the inside to outside. Design expressions, they just went through what the community engagement provided feedback on and what the most selected ones would be. They refined the plan somewhat. They talked about different orientations. These two were the originals. This is where they moved to in the planning diagram. They talked about gathering points and having different levels of interaction. So everyone comes in here, but having a library breakout for conference room, more seating zones with a kitchen, and then the stage, the risers, stadium seating type of space here with a stage here that could actually be supported by another room off the backside. And then also this would be more of that, again, breakout office meeting space. They also put a game area in the very back corner back here. That's more like kids' games, I don't know, foosball, stuff like that. And then again, the restrooms and some more office support kind of in the back. And I think they had some tucked in underneath, little library seating, little breakaway spaces. And there was additional breakout rooms in here, but it was kind of more of a, anyway, various different breakout spaces. And then you can see down here that this is the indoor-outdoor, actually outdoor space, but it kind of ties in through those doors to get into the seating zone.
I think if you go to the full page view, at least.
This one?
Yeah, that one at least, if you think about what we had in the space.
Planning in 2014, it's a really good comparison in terms of what was identified and what they've been able to sort of fit within the space.
The only concern I had was, it seems like they did a great job of breaking down lots of different types of spaces to use, but there was a few comments about how many offices, how many people are in here. It's more of a baseline program question about use and interactivity, and having a live-in space by having the Parks and Rec offices and engagement in here, and also having programming.
And that was one of the concerns that the board did talk about. There's really only space for like 3 or 4 offices here. So one of the asks was, how do you fit more staff space into here, and preferably not right next to the bathroom? So.
Yeah. And I think, but just looking back at, some of the plans that we did next door and things like that, a lot of the pieces are captured. I don't know if we, at one point we had like 100 person gathering room, that broke down into smaller spaces. And I'm not sure really how many people are, in some of these spaces, but it's more of a lounge type atmosphere versus a conference type atmosphere, which is kind of, I think, where we're probably headed with community center versus, but it definitely restricts the ability to have like a wedding.
Yeah, and I think, and that's where Downtown Superior's community space helps to augment that, sort of dual need. Because the slide before this breaks down how many people you can fit in each of the spaces, at any given point. So, there's a lot of dedicated conference rooms, because that's been a dying need for this community. There's like that boardroom right there, and then on the left-hand side, those are, you know, 2 dedicated areas, and then you've got sort of fungible space within it.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if we need to provide any additional comment, or if anyone has any additional comment that we want to send back, but, oh, here are those renderings.
I don't know that we need to provide this comment, but I did notice there was a discussion during the presentation to the board about those cool little walls in the back and whether they're really going to provide enough soundproofing for some of those meeting areas. So it's just something I think we want to kind of be mindful of as the presentations continue, how they're going to propose to address that.
And I think they stated that the one meeting room, the big 12, 14-person conference room was here. It was this one that's the 2-3 person isn't really that much of a isolated conference room. It's more of a within the space, but has some walls kind of blocking you. But anyway, some additional images if you haven't seen them. More the entry and the transition back to the food area and the seating zone. Also easy access to the meeting room here. This one's just continuing back in there. I think this is the kitchen. Not the bar, the kitchen. Some of the stadium seating and looking back toward the front. And then the stage would be over here. And this is that same type of space with the stage potentially here.
And looking through those doors is where the parking used to be, but that's where the food trucks would be parked.
That's a food truck right there.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and then, you know, you can have your cornhole game out there.
I think it's in the schematics.
Yeah, I think so. And this was in the back corner, so it'd be right behind where we're standing here, or back in this zone. So it's tucked around, so you could still hang out with people in the community here, and your kids could be back in here and making a bunch of noise, and it'd be kind of still isolated. I think this was the washdown or some sort of special room in the old plan. And just a section that shows kind of the entry and the grand entry space and the transition through different height changes. Thank you.
So Neil, can you give us some feedback on what the board would like to see from us specifically?
Yeah, and that's a great question that I don't have a good answer for, other than the fact that you guys have participated and shared information so far. Like, I think, you know, the 2014 survey, and then just making sure that Oz had all this information going into it, which they did. I think the last piece of it is if this gets pretty close, the next iteration, PROSTAC's not going to be able to weigh in on it as a group. But I think hearing from folks that have been on PROSTAC for a long time, or even the folks that have been PROSTAC for 2 days, I think really helps. You know, as we get to the March 9th meeting, does this get us as close to this community space as we've ever been, or are we missing it by a mile? Because I think there's definitely a concern. We have a $2 million budget. I look at this and think, I think it's going to be a challenge. So if we're doing this in phases, the real question will ultimately be how do we phase this in? What do we want sooner rather than later? And I think that's going to be really difficult. And that's probably, an April, May, June discussion. But, if this, as a design document, does this get us what we've been dying for, or at least get us to the 80 or 90%, relative space of where we want to be, recognizing that if we are phasing this in, a couple years from now, we might tinker with it some more. Mm-hmm. But, I think the feedback we've got so far is that this gets us really close to what the community has said at the, between the survey and the 2 engagement sessions. It's a long way away from the draft that we got in December, which I think is good, because it means they've heard what people have said, and they've kind of tried to work within the space to fit in what we've said what we want. It's not perfect. There's things I think we'd all like to see better, but I think as a starting point, to just get going, this is probably pretty close with the tinkering that we asked for in terms of trying to find, and this is a trade-off, like if we want to put more park staff in there, what are we taking out? If I think if we started with, like, we want to have at least 2,000 to 3,000 square feet of space for staff, then maybe we would have tinkered with it a little bit differently. And we didn't know what we needed at the beginning of this. So I know it's a super long answer to a simple question, other than, just keep watching it for the next couple of weeks. And as you see the next iteration, if you see something that looks totally wrong or just totally great, let us hear about it.
One thing I asked them when they were here, which I didn't see in this, and I don't know if they're gonna add is, to your exact point, if we did this in phases, how would we do it in phases? And they said that they were gonna actually address that, but
They
I
are.
didn't see that. So.
No, they haven't yet because they haven't gotten a bid on any of this thing. They're trying to get the design down, and as they go to bid, that's exactly what we asked for, is like, what's the à la carte menu look like on this in terms of how we can do it and make it work and not have, literally a jackhammer going for the next 6 years as we're working on different spaces. There's a lot of concrete in this building.
But if you look at it, I mean, one of the key things about this building is what's the main infrastructure that you need to have? The kitchen and the restrooms, and that's your plumbing and your mechanical. And if you put that space up above and actually make it usable, that space up above is your potential offices, except for there's no elevator.
Right.
And the rest of it, if you look at this floor plate, it allows you flexibility to change all the activity in here because it's a pretty open floor plate.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how do you interact with the bar and the restroom.
Right.
But after that, you have opportunity to move. You can put the games out front for a little while,
Right.
and then shove them in the back.
Right.
There's so many different ways you can implement because it's pretty wide open.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you definitely won't. You need to basically get the basic walls and
Right.
infrastructure in there, and then you can modify.
Yeah, there's a major wall that kind of, between the, I don't have a laser pointer, but
In here.
like right there, right? That's the one that's going to have to get knocked out on day one.
Yeah.
And after that's done, you're right, a lot of the frame stays the same.
And then even, if you only have enough to build out, the front half, these rooms could maybe not be built out until the future,
Right.
And this all gets done.
Right.
Because then you have your restrooms, you have some offices, you have your main entrance, and you're just like, oh, let's put a wall here.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do any of that. So I think there's lots of ways to phase that, and I think that from a furniture standpoint, there's a lot of question on, as you said, maybe it's not fully fit out at the opening day, but you have opportunity to bring in other pieces that you like as you experience the space, as you phase it in. So anyway.
I guess I was looking at this thinking that it's such an open concept. It's hard to really phase parts of it unless you build temporary things into it to be able to phase it. Because it is open.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, any other comments on this? I mean, what are you thinking? Come on, Ron. Drop
All right.
a bomb
Well,
on us here.
first of all, this is a much better presentation than we saw a month ago.
Yes.
Whatever it was. They've definitely upgraded it. The first thing that comes to my mind when I see this is who's gonna run it? And on top of that, how much are you gonna charge people to go in there? You gonna say this is free? Well, to who? Well, I'm a Superior resident. I got 9 friends that live in Louisville. I'm gonna bring them all over. I'm just saying, that those are the things that go through my head. Like, we've pretty much written off, it's not gonna be a private. It's gonna be a publicly run establishment, which, in my opinion, you gotta go one way or the other. All public or all private. You can't have both. So, again, who's gonna bring the trucks in? Who's gonna organize the trucks? Who's gonna decide how much? I mean, I'm just saying, then you got liquor licenses you gotta worry about.
Sublease, yeah.
So does it meet all of our needs? Probably at some point, yeah, some of our needs. I wouldn't say all of our needs. And, having been through many iterations of stuff like this, it's still missing half the stuff that's on our list. So it's truly just a meeting place. That's all it is. Let's face it, it's a $5 million meeting place. So.
6.
6, oh, sorry. Well, that's.
Don't make me come back to the community center drafts that we had 2 years ago.
Those are the things that come to my mind when I see that. I'm like,
from scratch.
once you guys figure out how much it's gonna cost to actually make this, I mean, we met in there and it wasn't that cold out and it was pretty cold in there, so, and I can imagine what it's like. So you got AC problems, you got heating problems. I mean, there's just a lot that has to go into this, and I'm sure you guys have gone over it all. But that would be my first question is, my first concern about this whole thing, if we can find the right scenario, who's gonna run it? Mm-hmm. And you are absolutely right. You are gonna need at least 6 to 10 offices in there just to have people who can run it. That's not park and rec.
Yeah.
that's not Allison and the whole, and Brian and the whole crew. They're gonna have to find new offices for them again. So I'm just saying, are we getting the biggest bang for our buck by throwing the park and rec people out and bringing in a whole new group of people just to run this? And again, how much is it gonna cost to run?
Yeah, what's the O and M?
If we wanna build a stage and I wanna bring a band there, there's gotta be a fee. It can't just be, if the HOA wants to run their movies there instead of having everybody get bit by mosquitoes.
Yeah, but the kids would be able to run there.
Or Ron, to your, I
Places
mean,
to run around.
to
So
your
that's
point,
why-
you know, like with our parks, you know, if you want to use a shelter, you pay to use it, right?
Right.
You know, and that's, you know, we don't want to have everyone start using the spaces in here and not use the park space.
But this is gonna have to all be programmed because it's inside.
Yeah.
So those are, again, I can bring up a lot more things I don't like about it, obviously. Not a huge fan of this, so I think we're just trying to make what we can out of something instead of really planning for it, so.
I think to me, it takes all the community aspects when we were doing a community space and recreation space, and we were heavy on the recreation on that one, and then now we're heavy on the community, and there's never been both in one space, except for the from scratch one that we
Right.
looked at, that was, you know, in the 15 million, just double this budget, get both.
Yeah, I think to that point, the main thing I would say from this committee's perspective would be, the thing that I notice is missing is, like you said, there's really no recreation. And I think,
Even a yoga room.
I think we've kind of already,
How much have you used?
we've kind of already beat that to death in terms of, you know, no one wants to take on Lakeshore or, you know, have another Louisville Recreation Center. Like, I don't think we can support that. But I do kind of wonder if there might be some light recreation thing that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And for me personally, I think, you know, on days when the weather's crummy and I can't go run, if there was a Peloton bike I could go over and use, there's probably a good chance I would use it. Is it true that, you know, half the town would want to use it too, so I wouldn't be able to get on it at all? Maybe, I don't know. But I think that, to me, that's the one thing that I think is missing from here, but then at the same time, I think if we did something light, I'm not sure we really need to plan for it right now, because I think we can just take one of the rooms that's there now, throw a few treadmills and a few exercise bikes in it, and kind of test it out to see if it works. So I'm not raising it as a concern that I think we need to do anything, but that's the main thing I see when I look at this.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, from this committee's perspective, we need to emphasize the fact that we need a little less sitting around, a little less food coming in, a little more, you know, people have asked us for, we definitively need rooms for people to meet. That's a no-brainer. But you don't need to build a stage to have a room for people to meet, you know? I mean, and then you can create in that room, you can have I guess what I'm trying to say is when I look at this, what's the best case scenario we're looking for here? The best case scenario you're looking for here is this thing is so full, nobody can get in it. So we got to manage it. Right? Isn't that where we want to be with this? Every room you got in there is booked. Everybody's coming in there. Why can't I use it on Saturday? Well, because we're full on Saturday. So that's the best case scenario. So how do we get to the best case scenario? So that's I don't have an answer for you. I'm just throwing a question out there, so.
And I guess that's the other thing too, is if somebody's subletting the kitchen space, and how's that agreement? And, you know, when you have a bar across the street or down the way, how's that agreement with the town here versus down the way? And, you know, if everyone wants to hang out here, because, you know, now you basically provided a community space with a bar that's getting the benefit of using our community space. You know, so how do you balance that?
So
Not run out other businesses? Because it's not gonna be a community or town-run bar
see,
or kitchen.
I see this as a little different. I see this as it's in a hideaway nook in an area of the town, right? That this is the first thing we have that we're going to do, and as I said before, that we don't really know what we want until we have something we know what we're missing, right? And this is a good opportunity for us, as long as we have it and we make it so that it's, you know, mostly configurable and we can program it to meet our needs, we're gonna find out a lot about what this is not. And that's gonna help inform our decisions of what we want downtown, what we want for the different areas, based on what we find out here. So whether this area becomes the, like you said, the best case scenario where it's fully packed and everything, it's a little bit immaterial in my opinion, because as long as we make it so that we have an area where we can put some bikes or yoga or whatever the thing is, or we can have meetings, we can have that, we're gonna find out a whole lot about having a space like this in terms of what it's gonna be to have to manage it, in terms of the cost to the town, in terms of how we want to do the next space when we really start focusing on the downtown area. It's going to inform us way more than anything else. So having something that's more, a little bit vague and that can meet a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, I am perfectly comfortable with that because we're going to learn way more about what we want down there.
Any other comments? Any other one?
Did anybody look at the video that I sent about the library lockers?
No,
Okay.
I didn't get that.
I didn't get it.
I think there's a problem going in and out. I swear I saw it come in.
I might have, I'm not sure. I might have just sent it to you and Leslie. Yeah,
Oh.
so.
So then the answer is
Well,
correctly advertised.
it's not that long. It's basically a library locker system that is it Belmar or Bell?
I did get that, and we have also met with the Louisville Library, and they have sent us specs for their locker system, so.
Anyway, I'm not gonna do it.
'Cause I was gonna say with all those meeting spaces and gathering spaces, I don't know if we need a dedicated library space, or we might just need a nook if we're gonna have, if we're gonna have lockers where we can go in and get our books and check things out.
I think that the way that Oz presented it was that the library nook was more of there's the drop-off underneath the canopy over here, the pickup drop-off area, and then this is just more of a quiet zone, library / quiet zone. And, we meet with Louisville Library and talk to their staff about how that could be used and how it could be an extension of the programming and interconnectivity of the two libraries, or the two towns. Right?
That's correct. And,
Sorry, I don't talking to my mouth.
Their suggestions were to have it be still open public space that's available. They might have a library volunteer in there some of the time to assist, but that it would be public space, not dedicated library space.
Right, and I think they also made a comment about, libraries are transitioning from large stacks of books to more, that transfer of books and also the media accessibility and things like that. So I'm not by any means a library specialist, and they were going to talk to Louisville. So just from a concept though, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity here. It seems like the one thing I heard is there a way to make one of the rooms or some of the space potentially usable for, say, yoga or treadmills or a bike or something? And that could be just a, transitional space, and it could be just a testing space, and see how much people use those, and then go for a beer.
One thing I was curious about is like the state of the art of automated sort of, figuring out if a bike is available and maybe have a key card to have access and having
Online check-in?
and have cameras so that nothing's getting stolen. Just like, are there ways that we could limit the amount of staff support that we need and still have a usable space for recreation? I'm just guessing someone's done that already, but I haven't had a chance to search for it yet.
You look at a lot of like apartments and stuff where they have like small rec centers or small areas.
Yeah.
Where you can use your apartment key or whatever to get in there, and they have cameras, so they don't man that 24/7. They offer access. So
One of my contract clients has the same thing, so that's part of what I'm.
This is a first.
So the next discussion of this is March 9th at that board meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think,
So we'll have something to talk about on March, whatever we're meeting.
yes.
18th.
Yeah, I mean, and all the docs should be out, like, say, March 3rd or 4th.
Are you having any more communication with Oz between now and then? Because they went away with the town's recommendations on the 10th to say, okay, we're gonna refine this and come back to you. And it's gonna take us a couple weeks, but I mean, even if we were to say, take that room and make one room a yoga room. I mean, it's not like they can just react to that. I mean, that's gonna be something after the 9th presentation that would say, hey, is there ability to, transition a room to a more recreational component within the space? Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We are sharing comments with them, so if people are commenting online, which is open and available now, we will continue to share those with them on a regular basis. And they are planning to have another final conceptual design by the 9th, but it will probably be available hopefully a week prior to that,
Okay.
so people can get on and take a
So
look
we can
at
get
it.
on and comment on it. Okay.
Win-win is we can take the donkeys that are eating the grass and we can put them in there. We can have yogas with donkeys and
Goats.
or goats, whatever the hell it is. There we go.
Goats.
Yeah, you can combine two things. Hot
Okay.
yoga with goats and
On that note.
All right. Anyway, with that, keep your eyes open. There'll be more coming up on the indoor space. So,
So one other quick question. And have you gotten any pushback from any community, anybody saying, what are you guys doing?
Oh, yeah. There's definitely been concern about lighting.
Okay. Just curious. I didn't see the whole meeting, so I'm sure there was some.
And those haven't come to the board in public comment, but came through emails.
Okay. Yeah. Just wondering. It wasn't me.
I mean, you got comments on why did you buy it, but did you get comments on why are you, now that we bought it, why are you guys planning on renovating it? Because those are two different things, right? And one is already after the fact.
Yeah, I think there's two camps. Those that, question anything to do with this building on, sort of in the public realm, and anything we do, even post-acquisition, is just, dispose of it. But those that have kind of, been patient trying to find community space are sort of cautiously optimistic that this is going to get us closer to what we've been asking for the last 20 years. It may not, and I think everyone's just kind of patiently watching through the process right now to see how close we get to it.
And I was kind of referring to the Riverbend Park scenario. We had people.
We have-
Yeah, maybe
It's
we'll
not,
find
no,
out.
There's no
zone
picketing?
3.
Zone, sorry.
Zone 3, where's that?
That's, I mean,
No, we have not had that level of
Just wondering.
feedback.
they'll show up at the board meetings if they're.
True.
Okay. Any other? You're on a roll tonight. I'm loving this. This is great. Good interaction, good discussions. All right, so moving down, I'm going to skip down to our new list of the OSAC meeting update and just touch base on where we are with that. And that'll roll into the Trails in Town 15.
Okay, so
Great.
a couple weeks ago, Ron and I met with Ryan and Kate from OSAC and just kind of had threw everything on the table of what do we need to talk about, and what can we get together here and do better. There were two main things that came out of that. One was a joint statement for Town 15. The discussion on that came down to three things. So right now, OSAC has this big, long, couple-page long history lesson on it and a lot of things that, good information, but probably not that helpful to a big audience.
It's for the Historical Commission.
Well, I mean, it's good and it says a lot of good things, but just how do we make that a lot more succinct and be something that both OSAC and PROSTAC can get behind and give the board and say, this is what we think. There were three items that we came up with that seemed to be key things. One, the town should not sell this for development. It needs to go through the master plan process before decisions are made. And lastly, that it should be part of a public use recreation corridor between Town 15 all the way to Autry Park. So those are things that I think we've talked about before here, and they're in agreement on. So I don't know if any thoughts on that? Are those the right three things to put in there? What should we say if we wanted to have a joint statement with them and give it to the board and say this is
The
okay?
question I have is, do they have any qualifiers on that in the sense that open space is their name? Their whole focus is open space, right? Where we have a broader purview to say, well, it doesn't have to be open space. So I understand and I can appreciate the fact that they say, the first two are no-brainers, I think, but the third one, where it's like, should be part of the corridor, do they have a qualifier on that to say, if it wasn't open space, would they be, you know, amenable to that?
I believe the answer is yes.
Okay.
From what was said, yes.
Because it seems like that goes against what they should be pushing for. They should be pushing for open space because that's their whole committee.
Yeah, so from that discussion, there was nothing said that said that they were pushing that said, hey, this has to be all open space, that this is recreation area, and they as much as agreed to that. Okay. Is that fair, Ron?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the first two we totally agreed on.
Yeah, so I don't think there was, I was surprised a little bit, but I don't think there was a lot of push for what you were saying.
So I'm gonna just throw out, gotta be devil's advocate here, but number one is that it should be town-owned and not for development. I agree, not for development, but depending on how you look at it, any recreation opportunity that you put on there is to some extent development.
Sold to a developer.
Sold to a developer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Do not sell for development.
So, okay, like, yeah,
Private
no
development.
multi-family housing or anything like that on there,
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, that's exactly.
But I would also say that for development, I wouldn't be against having a soccer complex, that has a couple soccer fields with open space and trails and recreation opportunities around it.
Yep, absolutely. So that was just
So
don't
that
sell,
ties into that.
don't sell.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. I can get behind that totally, okay. I don't want a gas station there.
Yeah, that's, the whole point of it was we are in agreement that we don't want to see more houses there. We don't want to see,
Right.
as you say, a gas station or even kind of a mini mall, strip mall, whatever you want to call it.
Commercial development.
Yeah, or even a school. We even said that, that was definitively discussed.
Okay.
Because that was the big push someone
That
wanted
was
to buy
what
for
started the
school.
whole thing, yeah.
Right.
So those 2 points we agreed on, and the third one is, as you say, is kind of, the first conversation I had with them was, you guys want one thing, we want another. Let's just try to keep it in the middle right now, so.
So if we're gonna meet with those guys again next Tuesday night, I believe, at 7. And so, in concept, are we good with this? We can wordsmith this and then come back with something we can
Yes.
vote on?
Do you know what our statement was that we came up with? It was like a paragraph of what we generically put forth as the, our town 15 PROSTAC.
That should be in our
statement.
notes. Because we worked.
Yeah, we worked
hard
on it, and we refined it, and it was more of a high-level statement than OSAC's
Yes.
multi-page. So I think there should be a merge of
It
those
was
two.
a merge of those two things for sure. yes.
And that, as long as that, the essence of that stays within the statement, that's my concern.
Okay, so we'll make sure that happens.
Let's just make sure we have that.
And get that done so we can bring something back that hopefully we can all agree to next month.
If you can bring back our statement and the
Will do.
revised statement, that'd be ideal.
Will do. Yep, will do. The other thing that,
Sorry,
anything else on that? Go ahead.
Could I ask you to say again, I didn't catch the third of the three, like how you exactly?
Should be part of a public use recreation corridor from Town 15 through Autry Park.
Okay.
That was pretty much our broad scope.
Our corridor,
Yeah,
Yeah.
corridor.
It's our
So this
corridor.
this largely is what our statement was, but
Yeah.
we'll go back. The other thing that we talked about were trails. And so you did have some comments on that, I noticed that, sorry. So the questions there were, do we keep the list as it is, and we keep ranking these things all together? Do we break out some things, so the county, trails that are in county space, do we break those out from the ones that are in, town-controlled space? And do we break out, in any other way, things that we think actually can get done versus things that, have to be part of a larger development of a road project or something like that, so that when we're ranking, we're actually ranking things that have value, I guess. And how do we best utilize our time and effort in ranking those things to get to a point where there's sort of the short list of things that are fundable and that people really care about. So how do we best do that? The thought was to break out for sure the county things that are not within town property.
So the Boulder County open space recommendations of trails that we put forth in September, October, November timeframe would be a separate list because the town has no control over theirs anyway, but we're recommending them to the Boulder County recommendation for open space trails. Right, and I'm totally behind that, and just to clarify, there's like 25-ish trails on there. So, and like if you break it out, I think there was, I don't know, 8 or so, 7, 8 of Boulder County open space trails. Right.
Would that include the, like, CDOT stuff that we have no control over that we've always been pushing for? You know, the light right there at the Davidson Mesa, right? I mean, we have always put that as, hey, that's high priority, but we really have no control over that because that's up to CDOT. So I would include not just Boulder County, but things of that nature like that.
Well, I have a second category that I would say, the other list that we've been, number 1 on our list has been all the trails in town center. And we added a bunch of trails in there to make sure interconnectivity from the town center development to the existing trails. I think there's like 7 or 8, 9 trails in there. There were A, B, C, D, E, F, I think they were. But we had a bunch of those, and to me, those are still developer driven, and we still have no control over that, but it's critical that they interconnect for town continuity. And so those, I think, are on the list, and they're in the second column identified as developer, right?
Yeah, these are all the first ones.
Yeah, because there's like 7 or 8 of those that it's developer. So it's Boulder County open space, there's developer list, and the developer, you know, and that's part of when FTP comes through and they say, here's our final development, we make sure that the trails interconnectivity is there and that we're not missing something.
Right, so something, then the list would be more like a high priority town considerations type thing, right? Seriously, that's what it is, because you would throw, hey, if this property comes open, we should buy it as open space. If, you know, you should highly consider that we have to have this interconnectivity in this area we can't control. If the county is open for trails, we should really be pushing for this. If CDOT's available for this, we should, these are all things that we have no control over, but the town should have high priority on such that it becomes available or a discussion around that happens. And move them all to that is kind of what you're saying? That's a question.
I don't think there's any clear answer on this yet. I think it's a matter of, we
It's
just
a
want
discussion
to, we want to make it simpler so that what we're ranking makes sense.
Because we also have a discussion about stuff that's gonna be a public works project. Like when they redo McCaslin, which they're gonna have to make McCaslin a 4-lane road at some point, all the way up the hill. There's a golden
In 10
opportunity
years.
for bike paths that we can't build right now because it's too expensive. And the second thing that we did have a pretty serious discussion about was we all are under the agreement that there's no money for any new trails anyway. So keeping those 2 things in mind that we discussed, we can put this list together, but as you said, the ones that are gonna get built are part of downtown Superior because that's not our money. So, or it is our money, but it's funneled through them, so.
But I'd still say that there are certain trails that the town has been able to put in because of opportunities, and the money just happened to somehow came available, and they were able to put it in. And certain trails along McCaslin are heavily used since they've been put in, and there's certain trails that are on the list that just haven't been put in yet. And some of them
that's
are.
the argument for keeping it going. We have to have this list available,
Yeah,
so.
exactly. And that's where we need to be able to list it so that the town board could look at it and say, here's our 10 trails, and I know here's 8 of them that are all developer, here's 6 of them that are all open space. So we're not gonna do anything with the open space. The developer, we're gonna make sure we keep understanding. And these 10, if we have $100,000, which of those 10, you may put them in an order, but the first one's $1 million and the next 2 are 500. The 5th one is 50,000. And that's the one the town will say, hey, we have 50,000 and that one we can get done. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the list is for.
Exactly.
But that's why I'm saying I think that it's 3 categories, because the open space ones, no matter how we rank them, we have no control over them. Boulder County open space. And the developer ones, no matter how we rank them, we can only monitor when the developer brings it forth and it's on their property and we push to make sure it's in their final development so that we don't miss an opportunity for them to build it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
And then you have whatever's left.
I think I'd be in a huge favor of having a high priority and opportunities list, right? Where these things are high priorities that we don't have control, but if the opportunity arises, the town should be able to go to this list and says, oh, they're doing construction in McCaslin. We should really see if we can get these things in. Oh, we have an opportunity to, this thing came available, they're selling this thing. Is it on our, yep, that's open spaces on there.
And that happened a couple of years ago when they rebuilt the road up to Key Bank, and they redid the sidewalk on the side, because that was always a trail on our list, and the sidewalk was able to put that in.
And I'd be even okay if trails were on, some trails were just on one list because we have the open space stuff, but some trails could be on both lists. McCaslin stuff, hey, if we got $3 billion and we could put it in there, we could do it. But if they're redoing it, it's on the opportunities list to say, can we get this added?
But I don't want to double hit the trails, because then you get confusion on which list, because that has the same trail on both
Yeah,
lists.
we want to have one list, for sure. One list between us and OSAC.
Yeah, and whether it breaks down into 3 different categories within that list, because that's really what I see, is that there's 3 different subheadings, and then each one of those get ranked within its own category.
I guess, but for an opportunity list, though, you could point to the other one and say, hey, by the way, these 3 trails in this list, if you have the opportunity to, it would be a high priority if you have an opportunity, because they're doing McCaslin. These things should be considered at that time.
Corbett says 2 lists.
Well, the reason why I'm saying this is because like, the thing that we missed is like the temporary trails, right? We don't have temporary trails at all in our list as a trails thing. But if we had an opportunity, hey, if you're building this thing, opportunity is we need to have a temporary trail to provide temporary access while this stuff is shut down. So you could have that other list that adds those things that I would never rank a temporary trail as my top priority, because I don't know if I'm ever going to need it or not, but I could put it on an opportunity list.
I would say I'd rank a temporary trail right now high, and say, how do I get?
Well, but that's after the fact. I'm talking about before the fact, when you're doing the
No,
consideration.
I agree with Corbett. I think there was missed opportunities with all the development that's going in and a lot of runners not being able to run on their normal trails.
You can run through that grass. Trail goes out, it stops, just turn and go where you want.
I think the concept of 2 lists is the Boulder County stuff, and then our stuff.
So that, are we in agreement on that? We can
Yes.
pull the county stuff out.
And then OSAC wants us to merge, the board wants OSAC and PROSTAC to have one list,
Yeah.
which I'm against, but.
I want to disagree very mildly, and then I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Please.
I kind of like having one list with all the trails. I personally would prefer to have maybe 2 more columns that had categories. One could be, price or cost estimate or major, minor, whatever. And the other one could be in town or not in town. Because I do think there's going to be cases where they're not quite so easily categorized, right? There may be all kinds of Boulder County open space that they say, hey, we're going to put a trail to here. If you want to connect to it, that's on your nickel. And so it's one trail, but it might still be 2 lots of money. So I don't know if that's very common, but I like having the one thing that just said, hey, here's the trail that we'd really like to have. But I get the other info of wanting to know which one you can go get if you have this circumstance or that circumstance. So that's all.
You're still maintaining the interconnectivity between town and open space. That's, valid, totally valid.
Is it reasonable to look at breaking things up by cost?
No.
We used to have it
Let me
all.
just say
It
no.
used to all be broken up. We used to have a.
Who's
page
gonna put the
two-
cost
Page
to
2
those?
used to have, but again, the problem was,
I know, we'd have
the
to
cost
somehow.
always changed, and at one point, we just scrapped it because we could never figure out if that was $1 million trail or a $50 million trail. So who's gonna make that decision? So, if you go back and look at some 5, 6 years ago, it had the breakdown of each
Because I can
approximate value.
tell you just by looking at it that there's a trail out by Snowmass that would be pressure fines at not $1 million, and you could get the trail from Calmonte to Snowmass to Indiana. But with the new ADA concrete everything, it's a totally different trail and a totally different length and a totally different analysis. So, there's a lot of trails that I love running that are not, the price of them is a lot cheaper because it's just dumping some crusher fine in the path. and not a full concrete trail.
Or a bridge.
Or bridge, or or retaining walls, all those other
Right.
wonderful things. I love taking my kids on the trails that go up and down. It's trail training. Come on,
Okay, so
trail training.
what do we want to do with these? What's the,
I think you can go back to OSAC and talk to them about breaking out county versus all the other trails.
yeah, well, they're on board with
Because
that.
I think
for sure.
that the big thing with county is anything west of McCaslin is county. Anything east of McCaslin is us. And we already have trails along McCaslin that we already have identified in the list to pick up anything that we come across. And if they do come across, it has to come across at an intersection. Cool. You know, there's only a couple places that you can come across there. So to me, and we also rank those separately at the end of the year to give to Boulder County recommendations. So to me, that's a separate list already, and we should treat it that way. I appreciate the interconnectivity.
No, it's a good point. You're absolutely right.
And
I'm
depth.
totally in agreement with you. So you're absolutely right, but at some point, we gotta say, well, we wanna make sure that the town knows which trails we wanna build when the time comes.
Okay.
If we have to have Boulder County approval to do anything, that's a whole nother bureaucracy, so.
So there's no reason to pull out trails that are already flagged as they have to be part of a larger road project?
I think we need to leave those in because
I
you wanna
totally
have them
agree.
sitting there because when that road project, like you just said, when McCaslin could, we all know they're gonna do it. So, if we
I
didn't
don't
have any.
mean pull them out and delete them, I just mean get them.
Right, no, they should be part
Separate
of the
list?
list.
Well,
no.
the big question I have still is for this stuff that's not Boulder County, that's maybe CDOT that we can't control. What do we do with that? For the,
I think my personal bias is still keep it on the list. I mean, the board's job is to try to manage all the competing interests. You know, if the community wants the CDOT stuff or wants, the piece on McCaslin, we're going to be the ones, the board's going to be the one prioritizing when roads get redeveloped and stuff like that and having it front and center that, this trail is super important. So how do we, manage the overall schedule? I mean, the risk of taking something out is that we miss it. If it's not in front of us on that same piece of paper, we're going to forget, we're going to lose it. The board's going to turn over and the new board's not going to even know that the CDOT piece of it was a priority, still is a priority.
I would say that they're all still one list, but you have the priority list of trails, and then you have a little heading or bar across that says open space
Yeah.
trails, and then, so you have two groupings on the same piece of
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah.
So you have all the trails in
Right.
one spot.
Right, I mean, and if there's, obviously, CDOT and Boulder County open space are massive things that we got to weigh, but, having them on the same place, like, hey, this is still a priority for the community.
Sure.
And, we as the board and staff have to go figure out how to work with CDOT and Boulder County to get this, somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, so
One list.
one list other than the county is, one list, but under different headings.
You want the county stuff on there, one list too.
Preferably, so that, if it's all in one place,
So if it was county down here,
yeah,
things
no,
that we
yeah,
control
I mean,
here.
just like one place
One
that
page of
everything's,
paper.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
1.5 by
Yeah.
11,
not-
11 by 17.
not separate tabs on a spreadsheet or
Right.
anything, one list, but,
Two different files, and you lost the other file.
right,
Yeah,
but ranked separately? I mean, they're gonna be,
I almost feel like you should rank it both ways.
two
Well,
sides.
I mean, I like the idea of putting the little, okay, this is a Boulder County
Yeah.
funded. This is a CDOT fund. Why can't we have a column that says this is,
We already have a column, or it's not a separate column, but it's a comment column in there that says developer,
Mhm.
open space, and I think we have a 2016 priorities, expedited trail. There's still designators on those that kind of tell which and where it was taken.
so thinking here, we could potentially have the one list where you have the designated, whether this is Boulder County or CDOT or whatever it is, we rank the whole thing. But when we're pulling together our top three that we do, you look and say, is this a Boulder? And if it's the top one, then that doesn't get it. It goes to the next one. Is this a Boulder? That doesn't get it until this is a Superior Town Trail. Yep, it gets hit. And that's how we rank our top three is you just go down and say which one is under superior control outside of Boulder County or CDOT. So you still have the one list, it's all ranked as one list, but then when we took, you know,
I don't know, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
like,
well.
I like the idea, I've always, the one list has always been good, but like, we can differentiate what, and we already have that column, so I don't. we can-
Okay, we'll.
And then
we'll
there's
go
the
around
whole
again.
idea of one list,
Because
an OSAC, PROSTAC combined list, which is,
That's a necessity.
that's a challenge.
But that's
We
where
need to do
we've added those together in the last few years,
Right.
and they're all the same number now, according to the map.
We got that all figured out, though,
Yeah, we're close, we're
because
pretty
I
close.
think they changed.
They
added
added
a few.
They added a few, but it was all in open space, in Boulder County open space.
Yeah, but they added like some letters. Did I see
Yeah,
letters in
I
there?
added all the letters.
Oh, okay.
Well, they have like.
Because they were all in town center, and I
Right.
added 1 through A through F, because they were all the interconnectivities, and it's what's in their proposal that we met with them on.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Okay.
for that meeting, we need to have the map, so we can make sure everything's numbered, labeled correctly, if we can have a printout.
So,
We'll get with Allison and see if we can get it.
all right, to keep us moving forward though, so you'll go back to OSAC and talk about this
Yep.
ranking and trails, and basically at our next meeting, we should probably just bring that up as here's what the trails are, here's what the map is, let's talk about it, and then we'll go out and rank those after the next meeting.
Yep.
So we'll talk about it at the next meeting, what those are.
So let me make sure I got what we actually said. Todd,
We said a
you're
lot of things.
You're gonna, but where we ended, let's say. Todd, you're gonna go back to OSAC and suggest keeping every trail on the same list, but using a column to detail and filter based on partnerships like Boulder County or DOT. Is that accurate?
Yes, and talk to them about what, if anyone has any better ideas, I guess. But yes.
Because if you put them as 3 columns, you can filter out everything but the open space, and it'll say which order the open space are in. Or you can filter by developer and say what the developers are in.
Yep, absolutely.
So if you do 3 columns and all one list,
Yeah.
it's all in one,
Yeah.
like that.
so if we could try to, define really what we're trying to solve here, the problem, right? And the problem I have when I rank my trails is, I look at them and say, well, that's a Boulder County trail that we have no control over. I would like to see it, but I'm gonna rank it differently than knowing the fact that we can't do anything in there. They told us multiple times they can't. So to me, the problem is how do I fairly rank the trails in terms of priority, but also trying to establish reality with it? And so having some kind of identifier, I think, solves it. That's what I'm trying to, so if we could maybe clarify a little bit of the problem that we're trying to solve. And then what the solution we bring forth, say, does it solve that?
Yep. Well, I think the real problem from their standpoint and my standpoint is we have a bunch of trails and really there's 5 or something that we really care about. So how do we focus on those rather than these other 20 that there's going to be no movement on for a really long time? And how do we actually have the value for our time in doing this? So.
And
Do you want the
not just
real
not
answer
to
for
that?
physically
Please.
in the trail, because,
Yeah, because if there's money that comes available, if money comes available, we'll move forward with it, right? Just saying, I got 4 trails right there.
So the
All right,
meeting,
so-
for everybody,
moving forward.
anybody can
Yep.
come, right?
Yeah,
Anybody
anybody's
wants to
welcome to
come,
come,
it's
yeah.
not a closed meeting, is it?
Yeah.
Where are we meeting this time? Todd?
Same place.
Freshly?
Yeah.
Wait, what, is the 25th?
It is, let me verify that.
Tuesday.
I believe it's next
Can I call in?
Tuesday. No, you cannot call in.
I'm an hour ahead,
Although,
I'll
when
be
is,
good, I'll be done with meetings.
When is
Let's
that place
see.
changing names? When are they changing ownership?
Oh, is it? Yeah, that is.
So,
It is at 7
Oh.
o'clock next, on the 25th at British Shelley's.
Bruce,
Oh, you guys have it at the bar?
the restaurant, yep. And they got some pretty good poutine if you want
Yes, we discovered that last time.
it. But they are changing names, so I don't know when that's happening, so.
okay, so continuing on with our discussion here, do you happen to have the amenities list? Okay, so I sent out the amenities list in the last, right after the last meeting, just basically saying, here's what the current amenities are on the list. And I wanted to know basically if there was any additional amenities that we feel should be added. I believe I added the ones that came from the park walks into that list before I sent it out after the last meeting. So they should all be on there. I know some of you already ranked them and sent them back to me, and I just wanted to make sure everyone had the opportunity to add any more amenities prior to ranking them. So at this point, the next piece I really wanted to touch on that was if we wanted to add or remove any more, and that's where I was, I don't know if I have a ability to pull up. Leslie, do you know if that is?
I don't think we had the latest one.
Oops. And that's what I think the email you sent me. I read it like an hour before I came to the meeting, or 30 minutes. And so,
Wow, the White Raven Playground Partnership, can't we take rid of it? Isn't that gone?
they said they wanted to hold until after this discussion.
All right.
Ron, can you repeat that?
White Raven Partnership Playground over by the school.
I thought we had
By
already taken that
Starbucks.
off.
Oh, have we? It was on here, so I was just looking.
That's
at
what I
this.
thought.
Are we taking that off?
Over by 1500 Colton?
Yeah,
Yeah, basically, yeah.
so let's say remove. Anything else on there? Is that the one that I emailed out last month?
Yeah, I don't think I sent it back in.
That's fine.
I was a little drunk.
Can you look at the very bottom and
Yep.
see what's on the very bottom?
Skate park, community park, fix holes in net, north end. Bike racks, community park trees between baseball and football fields.
That's already done.
Yeah, and I think they actually already put some in, because that was,
Skate park, add sidewalk from bridge to skate park.
yeah, because the
Skate park, we're gonna remove the improvements. We're removing that one. That's really about it.
Right. So,
Promenade Park, Zone 3 playground.
Yeah, I see that. Promenade Park.
I called it Promenade because that's what it was called in the
that
the
kind of what we're discussing?
RFP.
Yeah,
No, that's different.
that's different.
Parker Grove Creek is Zaharias. Yeah, it's on the other side of the road.
Promenade's on the trail to nowhere, right? Isn't it on the trail to nowhere? On the
Yep.
end of the
Yes, it's on the
Yeah.
trail to nowhere, yep.
Yeah.
But it'd be a
The old
destination at the
Oh,
end of the dead
the
end
dead
trail.
end?
Yeah.
Yeah, the dead end trail. Track age. Yeah, it's the dead end. So that'd be the Promenade Park or Zone 3 Park.
I think Waldona kids would use that. Right there. If it's a dead end.
That's why it was pushed into the, yeah.
So the only thing I had, because I wasn't here last month, was with this new parking lot they got, what'd they name it?
Norman Roche Trailhead.
Yeah, that one. I know there's some
The orange.
discussions, I know we discussed it with OSAC, that do we need to look at putting a shelter there? That's, you're high up, you're in the middle. I was just thinking, if you're out on a trail and a thunderstorm rolls in, it might be a pretty nice place to have some kind of security structure. Not talking about bathrooms yet, we can go there eventually, but
So you want me to put that on that list?
I think-
Orman Roche Trail.
Shan
Shan
Trailhead.
Shan.
That was the old name, the new name is now the Norman Roche Trailhead. It was on the top
top
of
of the hill.
Rolls off your tongue.
Shelter, bike, just amenities for that.
Yeah, and I mean, that was one of the asks that OSAC had for the budget, in terms of adding in some, and I think they had, low, medium, high in terms of options for the parking lot for now. And I think the board decided to take a pass on doing anything right now.
Right.
Because the issue we're still having is people are still parking down here. They're not using the trailhead. Like Boulder County is supposed to be putting better signs down here, like, park up the hill. And there are some signs there, but people are still, I was down here with my dog and there's still 2 cars out here. So, we got to get everybody up the hill, and adding some amenities up there might help do that.
Okay, so I'll put Orman Roche Trailhead Shelter. Anything
Or
else?
amenities.
Shelters / amenities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and OSAC did a pretty good amount of work, and they came to present the board in September, on a handful of options for the trailhead.
Google Maps already knows, has the name in the parking lot.
It's not calling it the Shan Shan property.
So I know how to spell it?
Rattlesnake.
I mean,
I missed one meeting, I'm sorry.
I know, but I like it. You're very talkative today.
I don't know if we want
The
to
drugs have worn off.
list it separately or include with the batting cages, but we had someone talk about a throwing wall, right?
Yeah, I think it was on.
Did I not put it on?
It's on there.
It's on there.
It was on there before, yeah.
Line item 31.
I see it, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, the biggest ones I think that were added were from the Walker Community Park.
Yeah.
And even though I added those, it seems like the trees are already there, so I should probably take it off right away.
The bike racks.
That's the best turnaround ever. Yeah. It's probably on, the trees were planted before I put them on the list.
The other comment I had was item 32 on the VVSD cooperative effort on school program fields that are not being utilized. I was just curious what that was. Talking about that.
There's a lot of history on that one. That goes way back to, yeah. It goes to,
There was a point in time where we
Yeah.
offered to build, we would build a turf field at El Dorado to replace the football field. And work with Boulder County, because Boulder County has all the tools and equipment you need to keep a turf field managed.
You mean the school
Boulder Valley
district?
School, right. So I think that's what we're talking about, right?
right.
Yeah.
And some feedback is Louisville did this, and the problem they have is when you've kind of created this joint partnership, the who is doing what they're supposed to be doing becomes a massive train wreck. And
I believe you have a new principal up at El Dorado.
both schools have new principals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
But I thought the big issue also is that whatever they did for one school, they had to do for,
Right, it's an equity thing.
for the other schools that are similar to it. So if they did to a K through 8, they'd have to do to all K through 8. So
Yeah.
if we did improvement to that K through 8, then somehow Boulder Valley would have to find a similar improvement to all the K through 8s.
Yeah.
One good thing is, there's a new principal, there's a new superintendent, some of these conversations, I know Patrick had them years ago. They're always worth revisiting, because something has changed. And if you look at the other K-8 schools, maybe this one is the one that's deficient. Who knows? I don't know.
So should we specifically call out a turf field on that?
Well, no, because there's the baseball fields at Superior, there's baseball fields at El Dorado, so those are all part of a, kind of a package deal if we could ever get together with Boulder Valley School. So, but.
I guess I just
I don't
don't
think it's ever gonna
I
mean.
don't completely understand.
We've been talking about it as long as I've been here.
I just remember when I first came here, there was discussions about the baseball fields and how out of repair they were, and people went over there with their own rakes and fixed it.
Yeah.
And it's like, is there a
Tennis
way
courts.
to work with,
Yeah.
and tennis courts do the same thing? Yeah, there's a lot of, how do we maintain and, is there a way for us to support the school district in the local area to utilize?
Yeah, we did a lot of work on the baseball field in El Dorado, but I've never seen anybody out there.
Yeah.
Other than a dad and a kid.
Yeah, they don't play games out there.
No.
Because you got goalposts right in the middle. So.
Well, and that comes back to, even just over here at Founders Park in the T-ball, and that I think has a lot higher use because we allowed that, what was it? The programming, 1 or 2 days a week or whatever that was to allow the kids out there, because otherwise, if you can't program it, they try to go to other fields.
Or self-program.
Or self-program, yeah.
Which happens.
Which, then you see the dad and their kid out there. So, anyway, all right, so,
So I understand that we have money to put in a turf field just laying around and we're looking for a school to take it? No.
That would be the dream, yes. That's the dream. That was brought up probably, I think I've been on this committee for over 7 years. I think that was brought up 7 years ago. And still has never happened, so. Because that's not a very good football field. But since, in the last 7 years, football participation has dramatically dropped.
But soccer's gone up, and that field is atrocious for soccer.
they have a nice track on there now.
Yeah, just mowed grass.
No, it's a crusher fine.
That's right, yeah.
Not in a track, but it's in a shape
Yeah.
around the field.
Not in an oval.
It isn't an oval, it molds to the hill, it comes down, it's kind of right at the base.
It's an advanced skill, you'll find it when you're sledding.
Yes, it's been good sledding weather lately.
And right now.
All right, so we're gonna remove the White Raven Park. We're gonna add the Ormond Roach Trailhead Shelter Amenities. Anything else on that list that we needed to adjust? Going once, going twice. So I'll make that change and resend that out. And so if you already voted, you already have your numbers of what you voted, but I'll just make sure we add those two line items. And then I'll recompile by the next meeting. And then we
You
can-
want it back when? Voted it back when? A week prior?
No matter when you give it to me, I'll look at it 2 days beforehand, the weekend before.
So we're gonna update it and send it out again?
Also, I'll update it with these two adjustments,
Yeah.
because we already added, I think I already added 3 new items on that list, when I sent it out the first time,
Are you,
so.
you said you're gonna take off the trees that you said?
Oh, yeah, I can remove the trees too.
Yeah, sorry.
Remove community park trees.
What was the reason for that?
They're there.
It's done.
Yeah, they planted, I think, 3 trees in that same location that we talked about. I think it was like even like a month, or maybe a month or 2 right after we went on the community
How
park.
are they surviving this weather?
I was confused about the sidewalk from Bridge to skate park. I was thinking that was already there too. What was the thing that
No.
just went in?
They put in the trail on the other side,
Okay.
but our recommendation of trail access right during the budgeting period was to put in the concrete trail from the bridge to the park. And it's still not in.
If you,
And even after the parking lot went in, it's still not in.
if you look at the skate
So I
park.
hear about it all the time.
Skate park, the parking lot's over here. They actually did a good job with the sidewalk on halfway through the skate park, all the way around on the south side of it, up to the back. It includes up the back entrance into the skate park there. But the whole side of how you get from the parking lot to that has not been, that's what that is. It looked pretty nice, I mean, I saw it.
On the
And-
backside?
And some of that's supposed to be addressed with the bikeway extension that is going to help connect.
I
you know,
just question when that is.
It's supposed to be partially this year and partially next year, but based on Dr. Cog money coming in.
The bikeway-
But I thought that the trail that we talked about was supposed to be addressed with the last one, and then we put it on the other side. So
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
I'm questioning.
Yeah, this
Fair
bikeway
point.
extension, I
And
don't
I
think
just,
actually.
I still hear a lot of people that love using it, but they hate getting to it.
Let's keep it on our list for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I made sure it was written specifically from the bridge to the park. And especially if there's anything else developed in between there.
Pickleball courts will be
I
scheduled.
wasn't gonna say.
I was gonna say a turf football.
All right, so I'll remove the community park trees, leaving everything else. So I'm removing 2 items and adding the 1 trailhead amenities. Okay? And then I'll resend that out. All right, so that gets through everything but project teams, just a question of whether or not we want to discuss any ambitions of being able to do that, but I would really like to focus our attention on the master planning, and I think that that's going to take up a lot of our time. But I didn't want to just bring it up in case, I know Corbett loves going biking, and, you know, if there's a trail day, biking day, we'll worry about that when it's not snowing and bad outside. So with that, it really comes down to, we want to talk about the park at Rock Creek, and I want to do that for like the next 20, 30 minutes. And just, I guess, Neil needs to leave for that discussion. But if we have any updates or look ahead for upcoming meeting next month, before you need to depart, so we can talk about the other piece. And then that'll wrap us up by 9:30, no later. Any updates or look ahead that anyone, you guys have?
The only thing, as we already talked about, is 1500 Colton, March 9th meeting is going to be the time that we review the updated draft from Oz. Aside from that, I don't know.
Yeah, so the next real thing is Arbor Day, right? So
April,
that's
yeah.
April, May?
Yeah.
April 25th.
April 25th.
So I have one question before you leave.
Sure.
They start talking about the bridge yet?
The Marshall Road Bridge?
From Element to the hockey arena?
Yes, and now I can't recall. So, as part of a condition on the approval of downtown Superior in December, Ranch agreed that they would, move that thing forward. And I feel like we did agree.
what?
That they would ensure that the bridge gets built, I think by the end of 2022.
2022 now, okay.
Or 2021, 2022, I apologize, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Just because that circle's getting very challenging.
Yes.
If you have to, I go over to the doctor over there. And
Yeah, no, it's,
they gotta do something.
I think,
We need another access point to that area.
yeah, and I think Ranch recognizes that, so, I think, Ranch was definitely trying to get the board to approve downtown Superior before the end of the year, so they could go float the bonds, and they successfully sold all the bonds really quickly. There's definitely an appetite for muni bonds, so not a problem there. I'll have to go back. I think we, under the consent agenda, did approve, moving that thing forward. So it is definitely moving forward. And actually, Ranch is going to be here on the upcoming board meeting on Monday, just talk about signage. But that could be a good time that we can bring it up to them as well.
Okay.
Since you mentioned that, what is the story with the big change of signs that are, we have like 3 different types of signs in Superior now?
Well, the one that is
They put
missing
it
the
up
word.
and took it down.
Well, I think they're having issues with the letters, staying on or off. I'm not quite sure. They're coming back.
But it's like a new concept of this
Yeah.
curved top, curved
So,
front, instead of the stone that we have everywhere else.
So,
So just-
the upcoming Monday board meeting, Ranch is coming in with an overall comprehensive view on signage.
So are those temporary?
No, that's part of the comprehensive view, but I think, and I haven't spent a lot of time on the packet, so I can't speak to it, but I do know that there is a comprehensive plan for just all the types of signage throughout the downtown Superior. I know it's not necessarily consistent with the rest of town.
I just want to put it's wayfinding signage and is on our town work plan, so just in
Yeah.
case you want to talk about it, we can bring that up.
Yeah, no, I mean, and
Talking
that,
about the one out in front of Tesla? Or you
Well, there's
talking about
there's
the-
one in
or you
front of
talking about
Tesla, there's one
What's
down
that
there
one
that's
up
like a pyramid thing.
yeah, so
And then
the
there's-
board approved the 3 town Superior monolith. So there's the one down here, there's one on Colton Road, and there's one at the top of McCaslin
Right.
at 128. Those are the 3 that the board
Those are the
approved.
3 new ones. that
Right,
we
the
just
3
saw
new ones, and
recently.
they just lit up the one on Colton Road like in the last couple of days. Excel finally let us plug it in. So that's Superior. But then downtown Superior is going for its own sort of identity.
Okay.
And that's where there's a little bit of a little different theme. But,
Yeah.
wayfinding is still super important for them because they got a lot of new businesses and they need to help people find them. So, again, in the packet, there's all these wayfinding ideas and concepts. But personally, my feeling is there is a little bit of inconsistency when you're looking at the corner of Marshall and McCaslin. You've got 2 different fonts for,
Well,
the
you
same
got a big
sign.
Stone. And then
Yeah. And the word appears on both,
The way
right?
you-
So,
Yeah, I don't know why the monolith got put there.
well, it wasn't supposed to go
another
there.
one.
There was an issue. The monolith got put there because of just sight lines while driving, in terms of people coming in off the highway, because otherwise it was supposed to be more in the center, but they had to put it over there, just also for the electrical connection too. But yeah, I think,
But it's right next to the turquoise pyramid too, that's off of the bridge concept. So you get like 3 different types of signs within like a block.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's a legitimate question, and I think it's one that we're concerned, personally, I'm concerned with. Because, the downtown and then Superior in cursive, my kids couldn't read it, because it's in cursive. But it's a different theme than what we've been using throughout town, so.
You should put an emoji. They can read that.
So the other quick update, just curious with the discussion of the bridge, Promenade Drive and 88th Street. 88th Street is part of the Park Rock Creek, or is it separate from?
Yes.
Sorry,
No,
I don't want to.
no,
It's kind of on the border.
It is.
So
So the board, as part of the 2020 budget, the board did approve redoing 88th Street. The board actually approved that for the 2019 budget, but deferred because this Harris project was still trying to figure out what they wanted to do. And I think we all recognize that pushing out 88th was not the best thing because the street's falling apart. So the board is absolutely going to do something about 88th Street. Alex Arenello from Public Works has already brought in a couple of drafts, and the one that the board anchored to was going ahead and doing 88th Street for 4 lanes, stripe it to 2, all the way up to the bridge. We have a discussion with the town of Louisville, city of Louisville, next Friday, because they don't see the need for 4 lanes on the other side of the highway, so there's definitely a disconnect.
They don't need to get people in tomorrow.
Yeah,
Don't
so-
worry about that.
They don't mind people backed up all the way to
Well, part of, what's happening,
Wadsworth.
what's happening on the Louisville side is, Campus Drive is going to connect all the way through to 96th. So for them, that's the reliever that the new ConocoPhillips project is going to bring, so they don't necessarily see the need on 88th Street. Nevertheless, the town of Superior, we said 4 lanes, stripe it to 2. Now, a condition of that, in the budget is it's like a $4 million road, but $1 million of it in the budget was going to come from Zaharias because of the right-of-way access and stuff like that. That's going to be conditional on the approval of Park at Rock Creek, and whether or not that happens,
So it still has
TBD.
it is the separated median.
Yeah, there's a,
the
yeah,
divided
and
median.
for anyone who's ever tried to cross 88th Street, there's actually a protected island now, because it's one place that I nearly get run over at least twice a week trying to cross, go down to the Autry Dog Park. But, yeah, it's moved the crosswalk up north a little bit, and then there'll be a protected island, down the center. The center line moves a little bit further east, so that a little bit more noise barrier to the neighborhood. But ultimately, it's going to be designed as a 4-lane road. And,
But it has
I
a
mean,
bike path
with
on
bike
the
paths
road,
especially, bike lane,
Bike lane.
and then we already have the existing sidewalk on the west side. And I think there will be a sidewalk on the east side as well, along with striped bike lanes too.
They took all the telephone poles down, so.
Yeah, so that was part of, in order to get there, the town paid for the undergrounding of the Excel lines last summer, and Comcast finally sank their lines a few weeks ago. So they finally cut the poles down, like a month ago.
Okay.
Circle's gonna get even busier next summer.
Yeah, so the reconstruction of 88th is going to be, I mean, Alex said it last week, it's what keeps him up at night right now in terms of how you do that, because it's a major arterial. Absent that, there's going to be 1 billion people that go, crazy
Just put in the 2
around
lanes on the
August.
east first, and then you put in the 2 lanes on the west, and you're good.
Right.
You'll never know that it went from a 2-lane to a 4-lane road. Trust me, it's self-phasing. So, but the other part to that was Promenade.
So, I'm sorry, yeah, so Promenade was approved, Promenade that connects from 88th Street to downtown Superior was approved as part of the toll application in September. The one thing the board didn't do, and that has to be paid for by the town, because the town has the obligation to connect it to the downtown Superior buffer, so it's about 1.3 million. As a budget item, the board did not approve getting that built this year for 2020. We're just pushing that out. I don't know if anyone's been out over looking down at the Lanterns Lane. It looks like a chunk of that road's already built. So
Crushers.
no, it's paved, asphalt.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So does that come out right there at where the light is?
Yeah, it's a little bit, just a little bit north of the light.
Yeah.
Because the light was set up as a
Right.
crossing light, but it's coming in, and the trucks that Lanterns are using are going in and out of that spot now all the time. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Lanterns has already built some of that road, still, I think.
Well, and
we'll see.
it doesn't have a tie at the other end.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No.
But that all comes down to just interconnectivity of
Yeah.
town center and
Yeah, I mean,
access, 'cause
and
those are the 3 access points: Promenade, the Circle, and the bridge.
Right, and ultimately, that whole development north of Lanterns is conditional, and when Toll builds their section out, and they had, 4-phase build out of their homes, and that chunk
On the far edge.
it's kind of far out. So, I mean,
Okay.
do you build the road and end up shutting it down because you're doing a bunch of construction anyways?
So can I understand this correctly? So Coal Creek is going to dead end where Lantern is, so the Lantern community is not going to get access from Coal Creek? They're only going to get access from 88th Street?
Correct.
Okay.
And bike path, I mean, in terms of car-wise.
Right.
Yeah. There'll be a
Well,
road.
They could go either way.
No, because
No, I
it's
think that-
2 cul-de-sacs that tee up at the end of Coal Creek,
Is it?
right?
Okay.
So it creates a T, and then
Well, I know
goes
Coal Creek doesn't
east-west.
go through, but I thought the Lanterns people could get out Coal Creek, but they could also get out Promenade
Yeah.
TV.
No, so,
That's a fire
Coal
lane.
Creek, it's a fire lane.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can't get out there. Right.
I didn't know that.
You can put in some plastic bollards that'll knock over. Okay, so I think that covers all the look ahead, updates and more than what was anticipated, so.
That's fine.
Any other questions or anything before we move on to the Parker Rockery? Okay. So are you leaving? So.
You coming Tuesday? Okay. Todd, you're gonna send out
I'll send out,
an invite.
Do you, how do I get to the PDF that just shows the overview? Because I really want to just see the trails and the development. I know it was in the email and the packet. Oh, oh. Planning. So, oops, no. Slow. Projects. Under review. Okay. So, just to touch base on this one, this is Zaharias is coming with a new development plan. Just a little history that OSAC and others have put forth in the past
It's by
few
the
years.
reservoir, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this,
Oh, yeah.
so this plot of land has been purchased and been spoken for? Okay. Yeah, okay.
I believe so. Well, yeah, they've owned it, but they're still in the process of putting forth a plan to be approved by the town.
Is it
board.
the same people we've rejected before? Okay,
It's zoned at work.
okay.
Yeah, let me go back to this one. I guess I just wanted to bring up that we've talked a lot about, if we look at the property here, the Hodgkins Harrison Reservoir, we've talked a lot about, there's been lots of discussion about the reservoir was built with Boulder County and Town of Superior. There's a lot of wildlife and natural preservation that we want to maintain out there. But there's also the development of the plot adjacent to it and how close can you get to it, what's the impacts, all those type of things. There has been some environmental assessments done on the reservoir. There's discussion about different types of animals and flight paths and birds and all those type of things. Trying to be non-biased here, just either way. I read certain aspects. I think OSAC put together a paper. Dan, do you remember any of this, or did you hear any about some of this stuff? OSAC, I think, put together a paper at one point that stated about some of the open space requirements or needs out there. A lot of the land in the Zaharias property is a lot of prairie dogs. A lot of the dirt's dug up. It's not really native. There's not a lot of plant life. There's, quality of the open space is not high. There was also analysis done by another outside company that made recommendations that said, maintaining the water around here, but a certain distance from the reservoir, that this wouldn't have a huge impact. But again, what level of development has a huge impact on water and wildlife? So I'm paraphrasing. There's lots of documents out there, and I don't have them all readily available. Leslie, did you send me some of those? I swear I saw some email from somebody. Yeah, there's lots of wildlife in that area. So, and it
Yeah, I
is.
think we sent out the Smith Environmental Report and the ERO report, as well as the initial recommendations that OSAC submitted in 2018. They are scheduled to come up with a updated recommendation that I'm sure they'd be happy to share with you when they get to that.
Yeah,
So, go ahead.
I was just gonna mention, I was looking for our notes, because I remembered Peter Ruprecht came and talked to us about this. And I found the notes from it is back in October of 2018. And, because I remember that he quoted a number about how far, and it was 50 meters. He was saying based on the Audubon Society recommendation was 50 meters from shoreline areas to public access area. And so I don't think that we've got that with this proposal right now. I don't know if that's for us to weigh in on or for OSAC to weigh in on that.
Okay. So I guess it really comes down to, there's a property line. I mean, I just wanted to touch base on history and just trying to understand. The Hodgkin-Harrison Reservoir is a critical piece adjacent to it. There's also, as we just discussed, 88th and the 88th development and new development of that road. So that kind of is why I asked about that before Neil left. And then basically you're right up against 36 on the other side, and there's also some retention ponds or detention ponds, I can't remember which one it is, over on that side. So with that, I mean, they brought this proposal forth to us, and it's just what is our feeling on that. And
Any idea what that setback from the edge of the reservoir is on that picture?
I looked for it in the,
setback over here on the highway?
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, if you look at the existing setback, it's like retaining walls. So this is generous compared to the other side.
And this is private land, but it's zoned commercial, and they want to put in residential.
Correct.
Is that
Yep.
why we're talking about it?
Yeah, it's, they're bringing forth the final development plan. So really, our analysis would typically be, do they have interconnectivity of trails? Do they have open space? Do they have parks? Do they have, what are they providing for the community?
Would we have the
Because with-
same discussion if they were putting in commercial property?
We would have, probably not, because we're putting in residents here, and I don't know if it would come to us, Parks and Rec, on a commercial development.
Because this includes a trail, it's specifically coming to ProStac.
Yeah. Well, and also, I would say, anytime we're adding housing to the community, the integrity of the community, having the trail interconnectivity and parks to cover it, so that we don't end up with a zone 3 that says, okay, well, we have all this new development, but the kids don't have a place to play. And so when we look at this,
They don't have a place to
They
play.
don't.
Like Toll House hasn't put anything in, Lanterns hasn't put anything in. I, off the top of my head, looking at these pictures, it doesn't look like there's anything being put in.
yeah, and this is the one page, I skimmed through some of these and I didn't get through them
And
all.
at this point, I don't think it's just parks. I think, there's no additional swimming pools. There's no additional,
there's a pool in one of these drawings, right? There's a clubhouse and a pool I can see, and so I'm looking at,
Which
I think it's,
packet are you,
I think I'm on sheet 7
of this first packet?
and page 3.
because the existing amenities that this town has
Are you-
is getting used more
looking
and
at
more and
this?
more to capacity.
Yes, sheet 7, I think was the one I was just looking at.
Part 7?
Yeah, part 7.
Okay.
And then page 3.
So this is coming to FDP, is that what you said? They've already done a preliminary?
Or sorry, I don't know which
It,
level.
it's coming to planning on
Planning
the,
Commission? Okay.
on March 17th and to the board on April 13th.
Did you say page 7?
We got a long way to go.
Page 3, I think.
Oh, 3.
See that area right there, it says pool.
There it is right there. So this would be similar to
Bell Flatirons.
Bell Flatirons, yep. Because they have their own clubhouse, their own pool. So it's actually providing so that we're not overrunning the other north and south.
Is there a playground or anything in there?
So going back to the previous page, I think, from our perspective of what we have to provide is, right now, my understanding is the red is the trails around here. Hold on.
I believe the yellow is the trail, the perimeter trail.
Proposed ADA route, proposed paved trail and future bike lane, proposed sidewalk. So basically you can see the red is an ADA trail, but these are other trails in here or hard paved areas, sidewalk. But it looks to me that there's some green, if you look at it, it's a drive-in, park underneath similar to the, it's not the Bell, it's the other one,
Summit.
the Summit. Yeah, Summit. So, but basically you have front doors with sidewalks to them all the way along 88th. You pull in and park underneath on the backside. There's green space in between the units. And then there's a larger lot in the triangle. And then I believe, where was that, over in here? Here's the clubhouse. Clubhouse with the pool right here, as well as a parking lot. And I thought there was a viewing area for the reservoir off of this parking lot. But a lot of it all comes into this front entrance part of the community.
And the yellow, that's the trail.
And the yellow is the trail.
Going all the way around.
Going all the way around, provides a trail around. So there is a proposed sidewalk trail. And then that interacts with the natural, I guess you'd say natural space, open space, retaining ponds, etc.
So where do they cross 88? It's on the bottom here.
So this, I believe, is a right turn in, left turn out. Hold on.
I guess what I meant is like from a bike perspective.
Yeah, how they get to it without a bridge or a tunnel.
I went to this page, and that's why I asked Neil about 88. So if we look at this one shows all the crossings. So, oh goodness, how do I go to the next page? There it is. To here. So right here is the existing Saddlebrook, and then this is the access. How do I zoom in on this? Get out of there. So here's the existing, and then here's the corner. So you're coming around, they expand, and the crossing is right here. And then it looks like there's a turn up in here. Is that the turn into the development?
Does that connect to where Promenade is going to come out?
Promenade is, hold on, I can zoom back out and get to Promenade.
That's up north.
It's up further, so it's on this end. Here's Promenade. And so here's the access on the other end, I believe.
Unless we're gonna cross over there with a light.
Yeah, that light's there, so I'm making assumptions here.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Just looking.
Do you know how many units they're talking about?
180.
108? Okay.
Yeah, 180.
So if I go back.
180?
18,
18.
80.
got it. Oh,
I think it originally was over 200 and now it's down to 180.
And this is not 55 and older? This is all
So
ages?
here's that crossing.
it's the same guy
I
that
think
owns
it's all
property
ages,
next
it's
to it.
apartments
Just making
and,
sure, because if it's 55 and older, then I'm not as concerned if they don't have a playground in there. But there's 180 units in there, and I don't see anything for kids to do
No.
on that side.
But that would be where our recommendation says,
Yeah.
I mean, just from flipping through these really quickly and showing this page, it seems like interconnectivity of trails and access around the property and even inside the property looks fairly
Looks pretty
good,
decent.
decent. I mean, and actually, because there is no public access to anything outside of this zone, because that's private property and this is Boulder County. Boulder County has said that you don't have any public access to it, so it's up to this landowner and developer to give us access. And so this, to me, gives us access to that.
yeah.
And I know that they've had watch parties for the wildlife out there. I don't fully understand the distance and how much impact that would have, from
Up top.
up top.
Should have a legend. It's like using an idea right now. No.
Well, that's just,
The scale.
this,
Scale.
scale there. Yeah,
Well,
100
that's it.
feet. Isn't that 100? 1
Yeah.
inch equals 100 feet?
Yeah.
I think what the other document said
figure
was
out.
100, it's like 120 feet from
Yeah.
building to
So-
shoreline. So it's gotta be less than that, it's maybe in the, sub 100 feet for the trail, so that's why I think we're gonna be inside the boundaries that, OSAC talked about with that trail.
I also looked up, there was the July 16th, 2019 Smith report that also made various statements about the habitat quality and overall aesthetic value of the property are poor. Several of these recommendations could be effectively implemented prior to or in concert with the development of the property. Weed and control, trees and shrub planting, and, installation of other aquatic plants, and that helps out the duck preserve, ducks in shallower deep zones of the reservoir. So there was setbacks to maintain the functionality of wildlife habitats is a topic frequently addressed in urban planning and widely supported by biologists.
I have a question for Leslie.
There is essentially no widely
Did you
accepted
mention that
guidance.
OSAC is preparing a statement about this? Is it in response to this specific
When that
proposal?
was done.
Do you know?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do you know when they expect to have that by any chance?
So there's so many.
I think at their next meeting,
Which is not till next month.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, but from our purview and our stance, it's, from trails, I think trails are good. I mean, from
Well,
my
other than-
perspective, I mean, any,
Connectivity good, distance from water maybe not so good.
right.
Well, no.
I don't know what that is.
No, the concern is how are you getting to that? There's gonna have to be a tunnel. If you're building a 4-lane road on 88th, how are you getting to that?
From here to there,
Yeah.
For a light.
there's a light right there.
I'm just saying. So, in my
And
opinion,
then
the
to
trails
me-
are not good.
To me, there's a sidewalk right here,
Where's the
there
new trail
to
going
there.
to be? That's coming, that we're building, the Dr. Cock thing, the whole 88th Avenue, is it gonna be on the east side or the west side of 88th?
It shows on there, so the blue is supposed to be bike lane, right?
bike lane,
Okay,
So it's
blue,
on
Right.
both sides.
Okay.
blue bike lane on both sides.
Okay.
And the red is the 88 trail because you have a sidewalk that goes over the bridge.
Right.
So they're gonna create a sidewalk on this side that continues all the way down and ties into the sidewalk that's existing, which in turn continues down and ties into the roundabout, right?
Yep.
So they are creating the same connectivity on the west side, or on the east side that was already established on the west side.
But-
So you have both. How you cross them
Yeah, how are you
is
gonna
the,
get, yeah, exactly, the only way is.
the
maybe
crossing
straight.
is either here at the light on Promenade, according to this plan,
Yep.
whichever one they get approved, or you go to back up here, which is, oops, I don't know what that is. Or this is the existing road and the existing trail on the one side, and here's that new connectivity with a protected center median.
Yep.
So you could cross half and cross the other half. So that would be very similar to what you're doing on Rock Creek Parkway right now.
It would be the flashy lighting thing.
Well, I haven't looked at the details enough to know that, but sure, we'd recommend that they have flashing lights. Flashing lighties.
And the thing that bothers me is all we keep talking about is we need to make Rock Creek a 25-mile-an-hour road because it's not safe to cross. And they want to do the exact same thing on 88th now.
How does Saddlebrook get across?
Same thing.
Just
I'm just saying, all we talk about.
Just saying, I'm like,
Exactly.
you gotta look at the existing, I mean, and that's
No,
kind of
but I
your
understand
comment
that, but if you're
about
having.
what's the setback from Saddlebrook to the reservoir right now?
Yeah.
It's 5 feet, and we're looking at 150 feet. So, from a developer proposal, it's a lot better than the other side. It's not maintaining the open space that was there, but it's providing a transition.
And did we say these are apartments or condos or townhouses or?
I think there's both in there. If you look at, if you read through it, there's definitely a lot of apartments in there.
And there's both
Yeah,
in
so
Bell
already-
Flatirons too? I never
Bell
really knew
Flatirons
that.
is just apartments.
I thought that one,
But it looks like what's kind of behind, not Safeway, but behind Starbucks,
Yeah,
Summit.
the Summit. And it looks like that, you know, these are individual sidewalks to a front door, and then these are parking garages, garage doors on the backside. So if they enter on one level and they have two levels, or I don't know if there's multi-level in there, but it seems like there's parking right here for the clubhouse, parking here for, I don't know, this gets to the community trail. Viewing of the Hodgkin Harrison Reservoir.
But in relation to the summit, what Ryan is saying is that, you know, where the summit is, if you go south across Rock Creek, there's no way to get across there, so they're trying to potentially lower the speed limit there or add bumps or add a raised crosswalk there. They just had to add a flashy lighting thing on the north side of it to cross over Colton. It has a playground in it, so this is, if you just kind of compare 1 to 2, and if it's very similar, you can see the problems we have over there that we should try to fix over here, and the things that they have right over there that are good, that are missing from here.
One of them being the playground.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I didn't flip through the drawings far enough or find it if there was trees or, I don't see a playground feature. I think this is just a green open lot, just like these are green open lots, so.
they sure don't have to cut down any trees to put it in.
I mean, to plant some trees in there.
Yeah.
But no, but to answer that, no one's gonna have their kids cross 88 and get to a park over there, so.
But I don't think, but I think the zone 3, I don't think that this is addressing the zone 3 park, which would be the
No.
promenade park.
Yeah.
No,
And
this
this
is just
one would be
addressing
making
themselves.
sure they have their own
Yeah.
within this area. So as a standalone proposal, and does this one show plans? As a standalone proposal, this is showing development, grasses, you know, trails. I just, yeah, I don't see a park feature of any type.
I just searched for playground in one of the document, and they do have a proposed playground. I'm trying to figure out
Oh,
where
I
it
see
is.
It's gotta be, is
I
it
see
that it right
There,
there?
There it
there you
is.
go.
Like I said, you just
In
gotta
that green
Bubble.
space.
dig enough. It's gotta be right over in something, whatever that
Yeah,
is.
playground.
Yeah.
All right. And at least they're on the right side of the street to get down to Autry and go to the skate park and all that.
That's true. It's true, they could just loop around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't, you know, there is a trail around the entire complex, but I don't see anything connecting to, say, 36. But I don't know if 36 ever would have a trail adjacent to, between 36 and HHR.
If you remember, there was a discussion about that with Patrick when he was still with us, that they had evaluated that and they came to the conclusion that the cost of the changes to the land they were gonna have to do over there were so prohibitive, they just didn't see it ever happening.
Right, that's why we're going down 88.
Right.
Right.
That's the whole point of that. No, this is just another big old community.
I know.
At least the nice thing about this going in, it's in a corner niche area that, you know, it's kind of standalone where you're not, you know, hey, how does it tie into all these other things? Because you don't worry about how it's tying into other trails. You're not really worried about, you're worried about how to get there, but on the trails itself, so.
Yeah, it doesn't tie to anything else. It
It's just-
it allows a trail around the community, and it has various trails through the community
Yeah.
that tie back to this park. I mean, really, when you look at the, if you're in these units, you're coming through here somehow, or through here, you know, it's getting, all of it comes to that central common space. And it does have a playground. I don't know what the features are in there, but.
I would be much more.
So to get to
comfortable
Autry, you
with
just
30
go down the
houses.
sidewalk,
Why put
the
on
sidewalk
88?
on the roundabout. and-
Well,
You don't even go across the roundabout, you just take a left and
That's
keep
the
going.
reason.
And as far as, you know, the playground, I guess my thought on this is that for the smaller kids, they're the ones who are gonna stay over there. As they get older, they're gonna be able to cross 88th on their own between the two areas, that the light or the protected area. So I would prefer probably to see a smaller tot lot than something, you know, bigger.
Yeah, I don't know skimmed through these enough.
So we're supposed to do that?
Well, I do think this developer has given us more than what the Toll Brothers have provided, and the Toll Brothers are going to put in, what, 600 homes? And
Yeah.
they're not providing a pool or
Or green space.
green space or
Yeah,
any of
that's
that.
the
I
point,
just, I think that, I mean, hindsight being 20/20, but that was a huge missed opportunity there.
So we don't have to do anything, but I would say if we recommend any modifications or recommendations of pieces that we think are missing, that as the planning commission and the town board reviews it, these are considerations that we have that we're concerned about. We should put forth those as concerns, or honestly, not only concerns, I'd say I'm actually pretty happy about that they do have another pool and community center. They have a clubhouse for this community, they have a park, they have trails, they have green space. You know, so there are a lot of good things about it. The only thing that, you know, it sounded like we're questioning is what's the distance from the trail to the water? Is that adequate? You know, I know I don't know what the setback is there, and, but it seems like, you know,
It's clearly better than on the other side.
yeah, and that would be, my suggestion would be, do we recommend, here's our comments on it. As a group, we think X, Y, Z are good things and X, Y, Z should be considered. I mean, that would be a recommendation to just for them to say, hey, we looked at it and these are our comments, versus not saying anything, because I think that from our discussion, we have some good points to just make sure we convey to them.
I like that idea where we, instead of always just saying, hey, this is bad, we actually like a lot of the things that we saw, and to make it better,
Right.
we think that we should look at the distance between.
Yeah.
Can we say they have to keep the pool and they have to keep the playground? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm of that opinion is that these preliminary drawings are also all nice and rosy, and when someone sits down and starts drawing up numbers.
and then
like,
they
"Ah,
just
let's get rid
start
of the
getting
park, let's
stripped.
get rid of the-"
Exactly.
I
So
think
I
that's
think
why
we-
you would make the comment that we like the fact that it has a pool, that, you know, because it feeds this, and it reinforces that they should keep it. Maybe we could use stronger language if you're saying the
Or we
same.
want to guarantee that the pool and the park are maintained in the final development. The rest of it, you know, trails look good, connectivity within the development itself.
The trails and 88th Street crosswalks seem
Yeah.
well thought out.
Yeah.
I think we should have strong language in there because I think that is lacking in,
Yeah, I mean, if we feel strongly about it, because like you said, you felt strongly that was there a pool, because if we add this many residents and we don't have a pool, we're continuing to overcrowd the pools that we have.
Right.
So therefore, they're providing an amenity to maintain a certain level of quality in the area by providing this.
Yes.
Here's what I wrote then. We appreciate the dedicated park and pool for the community and want to see this in the final development. We appreciate the trail around the property connectivity to existing trails and crosswalks. We have concern about distance from trail to HHR shoreline, whether this is adequate distance from wildlife at HHR. And I was thinking we could put that we will defer to OSAC for that recommendation.
Or work with, or.
The only concern I can come up with the pool and the park is it adequate enough for the number of units they're putting in? It's a huge concern. If they're putting 180 units in, and they're putting a tot lot and a little pool in, say they're putting in like the kiddie pool, okay, that's nice, but
Well,
my concern is it's gotta meet the standards of how many people are gonna be living there. Because obviously, the town of Superior people are not gonna Rock Creek's not gonna be able to use that pool. So,
Well, and with that, I mean, how big is the Saddlebrook pool compared to the number of units there?
Saddlebrook or something?
Saddlebrook, which is right on the other side of,
there's no pool there.
Yeah, I don't think they have.
It's a tennis course they made into a.
I think they have a basketball court and a community gardens.
Yeah, they made it into a community.
They had kind of a
garden.
big green space too, it looked like, just Google mapping it.
One of them turned a lot of stuff.
and then
into
the
a
other one
community
is the Summit
Summit
has
has
a
a
pool.
Right, which is.
And they also have a tot lot or two in there?
I want to say.
There's one at the
Right.
far east side, I can't remember if there's one on the west side.
I'm looking at the complete narrative document.
Because it overlooks the skate park.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a big
Right?
pool,
When
it's
you go
kind of a
down
big
to
pool, yeah.
the dog park, the pool's right up there on the top.
I'm looking at the narrative document, and it talks about recreation facilities, and it says, a large central community park space that meets regulation standards. Community park meet these standards by including park benches, trash receptacles, bike racks, pavilion shelter, tree grove, multiple areas of turf grass, as well as playground area. But it doesn't talk specifically about, because we're gonna have X number of people, we need this many square foot of park. So we could ask for that, maybe?
Yeah, the concern is, does the size of the amenity meet the criteria, whatever it is? But we don't know what it is. It could be perfect, it could be too big, it could be too small, but.
Open space dedication.
So we'd like to know the justification for the size of each amenity relative to the size of the plan size.
I think though, to your point earlier, it's not designed to be senior, but my understanding is a lot of it is apartments. So I think it's anybody's guess as to how many kids are gonna be there versus younger professional, unmarried people who don't have kids.
They probably have pretty good idea. And then probably
Yeah.
marketing to certain people.
Yeah,
Price is good marketing.
Well, and it even says open space dedication here. Dedicate land, and, wow, not being able to read, 20-foot, 10-foot trail. I don't know, they have acres and numbers.
Unfortunately, for Park and Rec, that's all we can cover. That's true.
Yeah.
I thought you promised us to be done at 9. I mean,
Done.
9:30.
9:30, yep. So with that last statement, is there any other comments to that? And then I would like to put that forth as a recommendation or a statement to the planning commission and the town board as just the PROSTAC recommendations
Can you
or
read those
comments.
again? Yeah.
Thank
Actually, totally agree with that one. Oh, I saved it and it did not go where I thought I saved it.
Then I'm gonna ask one thing quickly. Didn't someone come in and talk specifically about that area and that it was open space and they never wanted anything developed there, and isn't
but
the,
lots of
There's a-
people
aren't
don't
there
want
gonna be lots
anything
of
there.
residents that are just gonna go ape if
Yeah,
somebody tries to put
probably.
anything in there?
Yeah, but that's
Audubon,
been that way
Audubon
for
people.
years now.
Here's what I have.
Mrs. CM, the former gym teacher at Superior, she's huge onto the birds. And,
Here's what I
yeah,
have.
this is not gonna go over well with us, I can guarantee it. But we,
It's private.
but we only have to look at, unfortunately, our
Purview is the parks, recreation, trails.
when this comes in front of the board, this is when people will show up and say,
How
bad idea.
But they will, I promise you, they will send us emails and tell us how dare us.
And they'll show up here, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Well, we just make concerns, we're never worried about the weight.
Here's the statement.
Okay,
Here's what I have. We appreciate the dedicated park and pool for the community and want to see this in the final development. We'd like to know the justification for the sizes of each amenity relative to the planned size of the community. We appreciate the trail around the property and connectivity to existing trails and crosswalks. We have concern about the distance from the trail to HHR shoreline, whether this is adequate distance from wildlife to HHR. We'll defer to OSAC for this recommendation.
can you read the very first one more time?
We appreciate the dedicated park and pool for the community and want to see this in the final development.
You want to say park or playground?
Okay.
Playground.
Yeah, playground.
Because they have
Like
version.
equipment.
Well, I would say the playground and the green space around the units. And green space,
Yeah.
or green lawns, something like that. So it's 3 pieces that we like. And then you
Playground,
said
pool, and what was the other one?
Green space.
And green space.
green space, yeah.
And do we defer to OSAC or coordinate with OSAC?
Defer.
And then you said the second part of that first one was the justification. Just read that sentence one more time.
We'd like to know the justification for the sizes of each amenity relative to the planned size.
We'd like to know and just verify that they're adequate sized. Because, I mean, otherwise, okay, we'll tell you, but what does
We're
that
not gonna
mean?
do anything about it.
Right.
And
so
by
just-
amenity, are we just saying
The
park and
justification
pool?
for adequacy of the
Park,
sizes?
pool, green
Just
space, or the playground.
Justification that they are adequate sized. You know,
Adequately sized for the.
something about just adequately sized.
Yeah.
And make sure that that gets in there,
Or
because
appropriately.
that's what we care about.
And
Are they-
built, because that's the first thing they
Well,
cut.
the first line says is that we want to see.
We want to see them maintained.
Yeah.
Okay?
We'd like to know the justification for, let me see, of the amenity sizes No, that's not. Like, no, the justification, we want to include adequately, really, is the difference, right?
Just verify that they are adequately sized for the size of the development. Okay? So with that, do we have a,
Can you read it one last time, Dan, when you got it done?
We'd like to verify these amenities are adequately sized relative to the planned size.
perfect, I like that. All right, so
You make a motion?
I make a motion to,
Use
I
that
want
word.
to try and say, what is this? A recommendation to the board of our, how do you say that?
Our statement.
It's just a statement of our understanding
Our
of
review
this
of the plan.
development. Our plan review.
Park, PARQ review.
So is that your motion?
I make a motion of the following statement of our recommendations of the plan review of the park, Rock Creek. I think that's what's called, Park at Rock Creek. First, any second?
Second.
Second. Okay, any discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed? One.
Not because of the statement, I'm opposing the whole thing.
Okay.
Oh,
That's not what we're
Yeah,
voting on. That's not what we're voting on.
yeah,
So,
that's not with you, Ron.
Okay, so
Well, I mean,
let's just clarify here. Clarify here. All those in favor?
Of the
I
statement.
had of the statement that we have and that we're proposing to the board, because this is basically our committee's statement of what we saw, what we think is acceptable, not acceptable, whatever. So all those in favor, let's do it one more time just to make sure. All those in favor? Okay, so I got 7. All those opposed, we got 1. 7 to 1.
Because in a normal scenario, I would put together another, that say that we should completely reject this, but it's not part of our purview, so.
Yeah, that's the, as a individual.
Right.
I actually don't have a way to record. I might have to talk to you about this. All I have is a
Just
recording
say
and
pass,
MCA
just
vote.
say, yeah.
but
I'll leave.
Oh, here we go. Never mind. I got it now.
I guess though, from a matter of procedure, could any one of us as citizens just like show up?
Absolutely.
at
Yep.
the
Oh, more
public
than-
comment and say, I really wish this wasn't happening?
Yep,
And that's completely separate from what we're doing right
Yeah,
now.
that's separate from this, yes.
yeah. Because I think that's the other thing too, is just as committee members, sometimes we're asked to show up and to talk about things at a town board meeting, and we show up as a committee chair, vice chair, committee member, and speak as a committee member. But then you can also go and talk at any board meeting as a citizen and say, this is my personal opinion, and, you know, I'm a resident, and this is what I think.
I think it might make sense to just
So
make a
we wanna
note
close
to
this
say
motion
that.
first before we-
Oh, yeah.
Let's close
Well,
the
it's
motion.
closed, yeah, we already
The
have
motion's
the number,
closed,
motion
yeah.
is closed.
What I'm wondering is.
So
if
this is
we
just
should-
discussion.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we should
About-
just add to our own notes that we discussed the fact that we don't think it's in our purview to reject it. These comments were assuming that, you know, they want feedback on the current.
All of this conversation is being recorded, okay? So
Yeah.
the fact
But
that
no,
we
you
were
can
talking
put that
about-
in notes.
Yeah, I'll just put it in the
Yeah,
notes.
put in notes that it was discussed, that,
It was just discussed whether it's a viable,
we didn't discuss whether it's a viable development. It's
yeah,
discussed.
not viable, but whether it should be done.
And this is totally off topic, but it's zoned as commercial and they're looking at it as residential. And then this town has exploded. And this is again, like my 2 cents is we've got lanterns going in, we've got Toll Brothers going in, and now we're looking at another 180 units.
And on top of it, this is the third one that's come through for this property. That's major units. It's not a very well, again, it's not a very well, as I just said, if you put 30 homes there, you're probably gonna get a little better response than trying to stuff 180 more units into a little corner. So that's, you know, that's, as you said, totally different.
All right,
Close the meeting. We're good.
meeting adjourned.
For